Story 1. Phil accused me of cheating and disowned our baby for having brown eyes. Now he's turning our older son against us and not letting them meet. So I cut him off for my children's sake. I 37F have been going through a weird problem in life. I recently had a baby, and my Phil refuses to accept him as his grandchild because of his brown eyes. I have been married to my husband for over a decade. I have a 4-year-old son, Dean, who is the exact copy of his father and grandfather. However, my younger son, who is now 4 weeks old, doesn't look like them. He looks like me but has brown eyes like my dad. My husband, Phil, Dean, and I all have blue eyes. Phil has told us that he would not accept my younger son to be his grandchild until we run a paternity test on him. You see how crazy he is? My Phil has never been so fond of me. Ever since he met me 15 years ago, he has been resentful of me. We were still in grad school when my husband introduced me to his parents. Initially, he was very cheerful and fascinated by my achievements at school. But when he got to know about my parents, he made an awful face. He was upset that I come from a lower middle-class family. He thought I was not a suitable girl to date his son. He told my husband that dating and all is fine, but he shouldn't get serious about me. He even suggested my husband seek his friend's daughter, as they were classy and wealthier. My husband didn't tell me all this until much later. God knows what he sees in me that he stuck around. Unlike what my Phil thinks, we are not poor. My dad is a plumber, not a flashy businessman like my Phil. Phil raised his eyebrow when I told him my mom worked part-time jobs. Money was decent, but we were 4 kids, so we were always on a tight budget. It was because of the scholarship that I was able to make it to that college. He was shocked when my husband told him we were getting married because he couldn't believe that our relationship sustained after grad school. Though he was upset with his son's choice to marry me, he showed up at our wedding and was on his best behavior, even with my parents and family. 6 years later, when my elder son was born, Phil was over the moon. He was apprehensive about my ability to conceive a grandchild for him because we didn't plan kids for 6 years of our marriage. He thought I had a problem. Whatever it be, he was happy he got one, and most important, he looked like him and his son. My husband's kids do cast some good spells on their grandparents. To add the cherry on the cake, he was a boy, and my Phil is the kind of person who thinks boys bear the family name. My husband and I thought it was a good way to bond with Phil. We could have cut off Phil from our lives, but it was because of Mill. We were putting up with him. She is a pure soul. She has always been sweet and loving to me. Dean visited his grandparents every weekend. Sometimes my husband used to take him, and sometimes I did. After he turned 1, he started staying over at his grandparents for the weekend. We took that as an opportunity to rekindle our relationship. To be honest, pregnancy and nursing a child do push the romance into the back seat. We were working parents, so we didn't have time during the week. We kind of enjoyed the weekend by ourselves when Dean spent time with his grandparents. Things got better between me and Phil as we met quite often. We used to have weekly dinner at their place. When Phil got to know about my second pregnancy, he started telling my son that mini Dean would be coming soon. I knew it was a boy, but my husband wanted it to be a surprise, so I didn't tell anyone. I hated when Phil said only boys are born in his family because my second son was going to boost his ego, but there was nothing I could do. When my younger son, Sean, was born, Phil entered my room with Dean in his arm, saying, "Let's see our junior Dean." I'm sure he would look just like his dad, grandpa, and brother. When I handed over the baby to him and he saw him, he freaked out. He said, "Why does he have brown eyes? Are you sure it's your son? I bet they have given you the wrong baby. Let me call the nurse." I said, "Relax, he is my son, and he has been with me ever since they pulled him out, so there's no chance of exchange." He said, "Then how come his eyes are not blue?" I said, "Brown eyes are the most common eye color, and besides that, my father and my siblings have brown eyes, so what's a big deal?" He said he cannot take the features of your family. Look at Dean. He looks every bit like my son, and look at this lump. He doesn't have any of our features. Are you sure he is my grandkid? I was horrified at his question. I replied, "Are you accusing me of cheating on my husband?" He said, "Then how else does the baby not resemble any of us?" I screamed, "Genetics. He looks like me. Can't you see?" He got mad at me that I raised my voice at him. He kept the baby back into the bassinet and whispered to Mill, "We're leaving. We don't touch the baby until they do a DNA test to confirm he is my grandchild." He didn't let Mill touch the baby and asked her to come with him. She left with a puppy face. She is another doormat creature. I wanted to smack Phil's head as he left my room. My husband wasn't around. He was downstairs to sign the discharge papers. After a while, he came inside and asked what happened. I saw my folks leaving the hallway. They seemed pretty upset. I screamed, "Your dad thinks my womb is a photocopying machine, and this time it malfunctioned and didn't produce your copy." He cracked up at my metaphor, and I got mad at him. Now, what I'm writing this, I think it was funny, but at that time his laugh made me crankier. I was so annoyed that I didn't feel like repeating the incident to him. I told him to ask his parents about this. He is a smart guy. He called his mother, and she narrated to him the entire thing. The expression on my husband's face was satisfying. He reacted in the same way I had expected. He flipped out and yelled, "He is my son. We're not running any eternity test to satisfy that grumpy man's ego." Sadly, his mother often has to face the brunt of Phil's behavior. I started crying because it was just too much for me to handle. I had delivered 8 hours ago. I was bleeding. I was in pain due to an episiotomy. I was sore nursing the baby, and on top of that, my Phil accused me of cheating. My husband hugged me and said we would not run any paternity test on our child. His support meant everything to me at that point. Dean was staying with his grandparents during my delivery. After I came back home, my husband went to pick him up. Phil was at home. He asked my husband when the DNA report was coming. Yeah, that's how my Phil is. He thinks his statement is a court order, and people will have to abide by it. My husband told him that we are not doing any tests and he knows he is the father of our son. I'm sure there would have been more discussion on my character, but my husband said that was it. He brought Dean home. He was happy to meet his younger brother, but he said, Popsy, his grandfather, was telling that the baby would look like me. Then why does the baby have brown eyes and not blue eyes like me? It made my blood boil, but I said, your baby brother looks like Graina, my dad. You saw his eyes are brown, right? He nodded and kissed the baby's forehead. There hasn't been any discussion since then, but Phil has not allowed Mill to visit the baby until we run a paternity test. The thing is, we don't give a rat's ass about his demand, but it hurts to see Mill suffering. She video calls me to see the baby and sobs that she cannot take him into her arms. I don't know what to do. I mean, I know it's our baby because I have never cheated on my husband, so there's no harm in getting the DNA test done and closing the matter, but it would be like boosting my Phil's ego, which I really don't want to do. Any suggestion here is highly appreciated. Update 1. Hello all, thanks for the comments. My baby turned 6 months old. He has started looking like me, which I and my husband absolutely adore, but there's a problem with the elder one. I'll come to it eventually. The situation with Phil is still the same. He refused to accept Sean as his grandchild until he saw the DNA report. Mill was also not allowed to meet the baby. However, she visits us during the afternoon when Phil and my husband are at work. No one knew about this secret meeting. It's unusual for people to know that I share a very good relationship with my Mill. She's the reason we are still in touch with Phil. She loves both her grandsons dearly, and we don't want to take that away from her. Meanwhile, Dean continued visiting his grandparents. He spent his weekends fishing and golfing with his grandpa. He loved spending time with him. It was a relief for us because it gave us enough time to care for the younger one. However, it was a curse in disguise. Phil is using this opportunity to turn my son against me. 2 weeks ago, Dean told me that I should send Sean back to his parents. I was confused at his request. I said, we are Sean's parents, and it is his house, so where do you want me to send him? He said he asked his popsy why he was not visiting our home and why we were not having family dinners as we used to have. Phil told him Sean was not his brother and someone else's child, so unless I give him away to his father, he was not going to come to our house. I was flabbergasted at this. How can someone be so evil as to fill poison into a 4-year-old kid? This was not a single incident. Of late, I noticed Dean was behaving very rudely. He had grown resentful of his brother. He throws a lot of tantrums. We were ignoring it until now, taking it to be his meltdown, but now we realize that he's turning into an entitled brat. In fact, we discussed this with a psychologist, and she said that sibling jealousy was very common. He feels less important after his brother came, so he was acting that way. She suggested we give him the time and space to accept the baby and develop the sibling feelings. She gave us a few tips and activities to do with the kids to build the connection and asked us to wait for at least a year. Now we know that he didn't harbor that hatred of his own, but it is being fed by his grandpa. Though I was super angry at Dean, I realized it was not his words, so I went soft with him. I made him understand that grandpa might be kidding, so he shouldn't take it seriously, and emphasized that Sean was his baby brother and he should treat him like one. When my husband came in the evening, I told him about it. He is a short-tempered man. He got angry and wanted to call his dad and school him. I sat him down and made him understand that there's a deeper problem. I told him we should do the DNA test and close the chapter once and for all because this is creating chaos in the family, but he is not budging from his stand. He says he doesn't need to prove to anyone. He doesn't understand that Phil is using that against us. He has been feeding lies to Dean and turning him bitter. My husband is a great human being except for one trait he inherited from his father: stubbornness. He refused to drop his gun and do the DNA test. He called his dad and yelled that he had been feeding lies to our son, and if he continues to do so, we'll cut him off from Dean's life. I got absolutely pissed off at this. I mean, this is a very delicate situation. We cannot just stop Dean from going to his grandpa. He is almost 5 now, he questions everything. We have to be smart in our approach. I don't know how to deal with this situation. Update 2. Hey guys, thanks for putting up with me. It has become therapeutic for me. Here's the new update. After the last blowout, things were silent and usual. Mill continued to visit us secretly, but now she came when Dean was at his play school. He was super close to his grandpa, and we didn't want him to leak this secret. I told my Mill that she needs to show her backbone and stand up for her choice. This secret meeting is not helping anyone, but she chose to have it this way. Anyways, Dean visits his grandparents as usual, though he didn't say or do anything evil to his brother. I somehow do not like his closeness with Phil. The main reason is Dean is too attached to him, and Phil is turning my kid into a mini version of himself, which I really don't want. That attachment is becoming toxic for us. Last weekend, my parents came over. They live 9 hours away. I told Dean that this weekend he's not going to his grandparents because we are going out with my parents. He started throwing tantrums at us. How could we not let him meet his grandpa? I tried to make him understand that Granny came from so far away to meet him, so he could skip meeting Grandpa for one weekend. He started crying and throwing things at me. I wanted to punish him, but my parents were there. They stopped me. Dean is their grandkid too. They also can't see him crying. My parents were disheartened, but they still insisted that we drop Dean to his grandpa if he doesn't want to spend time with him. I got so mad at my husband that I said we had to cut off his dad from our life because I didn't want my son to be a chauvinist like his grandfather. He got mad at me. I don't know if I overstepped my boundary, but I don't care. He later understood that I was trying to protect my son. I think the water has breached all levels, and now we should think about cutting off my Phil from Dean's life. I don't want to think about my Mill anymore because she needs to stand up for herself. Update 3. Dean turned 5 this Wednesday. His grandpa gifted him a PS5 and an iPhone 12. I was shocked to see that. I told my husband that Dean is 5 and he doesn't need an iPhone or any phone for that matter, and a PS5? Who gives a 5-year-old a PS5? This wasn't a gift but spoiling. In the past as well, I had complained to my husband that Phil had been spoiling him with unnecessary gifts, but he shrugged it off that his father was just being a loving grandpa. I took away the phone from Dean and said he could not have it as he was still a kid. He turned rebellious, snatched the phone from my hand, and said he was going to report me to his grandpa. I was astonished at his behavior. My husband snatched the phone from his hand. He started crying and said, "Grandpa told me that you hate him and you don't want me to spend time with him. Grandpa gave me this phone so that I can talk to him whenever I want. I'm going to report you." Tears welled up in my eyes as he said this. I thought I lost my son to my Phil. My husband calmed down Dean and asked him all the details. So Phil has been filling poison in Dean's ear. He has been telling him that we don't love Dean and we are going to separate him from his grandpa. So whenever he feels threatened, he should call him. Phil had even fed his number on that phone. That night, I cried myself to sleep. My husband tried to pacify me and said we would cut off Phil from our life, etc. The next day, I told my husband, whether he likes it or not, I am going to get the DNA test on Sean and then shove the report on Phil's face before cutting him off. He tried to push back, but I said if he doesn't comply, I'm going to think about separating our ways because I'm done with his stubbornness and his dad's toxicity. He gave in and we did the test yesterday. We're awaiting test results. Meanwhile, we have enrolled Dean in counseling to clean up the poison he has been fed. I'll update the thread as things develop. Update 4. Finally, we have cut off Phil from our life. As I mentioned earlier, we did the DNA test, and it came out that Sean is 100% my husband's son. We didn't have any doubt about that. However, the incidents leading to the cutoff were quite dramatic. Phil put up a show when we didn't drop Dean at his home on the weekend. He called up my husband and asked about it. My husband said Dean was busy. We are taking him out for a picnic. He was annoyed at this but didn't say anything. We actually went for the picnic. We realized that it was part of our mistake to let our son spend so much time with him initially. Dean was upset but he enjoyed the day out with us. Then the following weekend, we again took him out for a water activity. This continued for 3 weeks until Phil lost his cool and said he knew what we were trying to do. He threatened us that he would take away our son from us if we didn't let him meet Dean. I said, sure, try us. Then the DNA report came and we went to his place with Sean. We left Dean with a babysitter. Phil was shocked to see us. This was the first time I was visiting him after Sean was born. He asked, "Where's my grandson?" I said, "In my arms." He said, "I'm talking about my legitimate grandson, Dean, and mind you, this brown-eyed guy shouldn't be at my home next time." I pulled out the DNA report and literally threw it at him. He screamed at me to watch my behavior. I said, "I have behaved very well in the past, which I regret now because you deserve this disrespect. You looked down upon me. You accused me of cheating on my husband. You turned my son against me. What do you expect in return? Check out the DNA report. Looks like your genes are not strong enough to suppress the brown eyes. Sad for you. Sean is your grandson, but you won't get to play with any of your grandsons now. We're cutting you off from our life." He was shocked and short of words. He looked at my husband to pitch in, but he said it was my decision and I had his full support. Phil screamed that he was going to report us to CPS for neglecting Dean and would take his custody. I said, "Try it, and I would rip you apart." I don't know how I got so fierce that day. I guess all the rage that was piling over these years came out. I was spitting venom, I tell you, and I don't regret any bit of it. He tried to contact my husband after that, but he put his foot down and said we are not letting Dean around him until he is an adult. Phil showed up at my husband's workplace to convince him, but my husband said if he further pestered us, we would leave the country and ghost them. Since then, he has been silent and I like it that way. Mill called me and sobbed. She asked if she could continue with her secret visits. I informed her that her son knows about it, and we're fine with her visit until that grumpy evil man is out of our sight. She showed up once after that and apologized to me for her husband's behavior. I told her that she should learn to stand up for herself. I hope she understands this now. Now on to the next story. Story 2. Before we start, if you're enjoying this video so far, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Now let's continue. After being wrongfully imprisoned for 9 years, I lost touch with my girlfriend. It's been over 10 years. Would it be wrong to contact her? Sorry for any mistakes. English is not my first language. When I was a university student, I fell in love with Daria. Not her real name, obviously. She was the little sister of my best friend, so I considered her off-limits, but my crush on her persisted and grew. She's one of those beautiful, brilliant people who is alive and breathing to make the world a better place. How could I not be drawn to that? One day, she told me she had feelings for me, and, to my relief, my best friend didn't have a problem with me dating his sister either. So, for 2 wonderful years, Daria was my girlfriend. I should have asked her to marry me. I don't know why I didn't. I suppose I thought I had all the time in the world. We were young, and there was no need to rush things. We lived in a country that isn't exactly democratic, and we were political activists. I ended up getting arrested and going to prison for 9 years. Please don't think I'm some kind of monster for this. I don't want to go into detail in case it makes me identifiable somehow, but we didn't hurt anyone or do anything immoral. What we did isn't even illegal in the country where I currently live, and our beliefs were far from extremist. I haven't seen or spoken to Daria since the day I got arrested. My best friend died shortly after, and Daria left the country, partly due to the possibility that she'd be arrested too. There wasn't any way for her to contact me while I was in prison, though apparently she contacted my dad a few times in the beginning. Things got even worse in our country while I was incarcerated, so my dad and I immigrated when I was released. We've been living in Western Europe ever since, and life is pretty okay. I live with my dad, and I have a steady, if shitty, job. Months ago, I found Daria online. She lives in a neighboring country, 7 hours away by rail. She doesn't use social media too much, but from what I've seen, there's no evidence of a partner or kids. And even if she's married, I'd be content just to be her friend, as I was for the first years we knew each other. Part of me desperately wants to reach out to her, and my dad has been encouraging me to do so, but I feel like it'd be too selfish. The circumstances of her brother's death were very traumatic for her, and I'm afraid that I'm just a living reminder of all the bad things that happened to us. And if she does have a partner, would my contacting her offend him and trouble their relationship? I don't want to cause her any more sadness. Time stood still for me while I was in prison, but I know it didn't for her or anyone else. She's done so well for herself. She's built a whole life, and I don't want to derail that life just because I feel entitled to a place in it. She might not even remember me at all. And even if she did invite me back into her life, I'd be nothing but a burden now, owing to my wrecked mental health. We've been apart twice as long as I knew her. Have I even the right to miss her as much as I do? For now, I've contented myself with Googling her name every so often and seeing that she's okay. It just hurts a lot, and I don't know how to make it not hurt. I still love her with everything I have. I probably always will. Should I reach out to her or leave her alone? If I do contact her, what should I even say? Update 1. I, 35M, was incarcerated and lost touch with 33F. I contacted her and she responded. The short version of the original post is that I was wondering whether I should try to contact my former girlfriend after I went to prison for a long time. The consensus was that I should, and people gave very good advice on how to do that. First, I want to say thank you to everyone who offered advice or kind words. I had spent so long feeling ashamed about my situation and expecting most people to react very negatively if they knew. I had barely discussed it with anyone before except my dad and people whose job it is to help me. Lawyers, therapists, etc. And I was very surprised to be met with so much compassion from a bunch of complete strangers. Thank you, truly. Several people asked for an update, and that's the least I can do in return. I sent Daria a message the evening after I made my post. It was something like, I don't mean to intrude, but I wanted to say hello and thought I would give you my new contact information in case you ever felt like getting in touch. If not, that's completely fine too. I left her my mobile number and email address, wished her well, and that was that. I knew it might be a while before she responded, if she responded at all, so I tried to put it out of my mind. Early Monday morning, my phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number from the country where Daria lives. Who else would ever be calling me from there? I panicked a little bit, but I managed to answer in time. She asked a few times if it was really me, and I couldn't tell if she was laughing or crying at first. She called me by the very affectionate version of my name she used to, but then she quickly apologized and corrected herself, which broke my heart a little bit. It was an awkward phone call, but not in a bad way. I was extremely nervous, and it seemed like she was too, but happy also. Some of you mentioned that Daria would want to know that I was safe, and this was more true than I could have guessed, because unrest in my country increased a lot during the last year I was in prison. She was afraid that they would decide to quietly kill me rather than let me go. There are documented cases of other prisoners like me having met very suspicious ends in the months before my release, so it wasn't a totally unreasonable worry. She also said she repeatedly tried to send me parcels of supplies and put money on my commissary account, but her attempts were rejected without explanation after my sentencing. I was not allowed to receive correspondence or to have a commissary account at all because of the classification of my crimes, so she was forced to give up. She told me this as an apology, as if I would have been disappointed with her for not helping me more. I had no idea she had done any of that. I do know that it was not a safe thing for her to do, and I feel terrible that she put herself at risk trying to make me a little more comfortable. She didn't seem to want to talk about what happened any more than that, and so we didn't. We changed the subject to more lighthearted things. Our jobs, the cities where we live, how my dad is adapting to a new country, etc. When she arrived at work and had to end the phone call, she asked if I wanted to continue talking through a messaging app. Obviously, I said yes and downloaded it immediately. We sent messages throughout the day, and she even interrupted her commute home to send me a picture of a restaurant modeled after one of my favorite books, just because she thought I would like it. She told me that she thought of me every time she saw it, but unfortunately, the restaurant itself was not so good. I was afraid she wouldn't remember me, but she even remembers the things I like to read. She remembers a lot of little things, even stuff I forgot. We have been sending messages back and forth ever since and talking on the phone after I finish work at night until she gets too sleepy. Sometimes it feels like I'm 24, and she's texting me from a few blocks away, as if the next thing she might ask is what's for dinner. Other times it seems like we're trying to will dead versions of ourselves back to life in order to avoid acknowledging what we've lost. She seems a lot more timid than she used to, more passive, which I suppose makes sense. Sometimes I worry about how much I've changed and that maybe she won't find anything left in me that's worthy of her. But if I could express in words what it feels like to hear her laugh, I could explain that there's also a lot that we know very well. She hasn't lost her kindness or her warmth or her empathy. She still cares about me and I still care about her. I know that rebuilding a friendship after all that's happened will take lots of patience, and I have plenty to spare. I'm just happy to have the chance to get to know her again. This morning, Daria asked if I want to have a video call sometime this weekend. I agreed, but I'm ashamed to admit that as much as I want to see her, I'm very nervous. I look so different than she would remember. My jaw is messed up, and I have the teeth of a hockey player. Fortunately, I will qualify for healthcare insurance soon and be able to have it fixed. I lost weight that I haven't put back on, and I see an old man in the mirror. I'm also worried that I will get very emotional when I see her and embarrass myself that way. I don't really cry in front of people. I'm not used to it, and this doesn't seem like a good occasion to start. Aside from not wanting to appear pitiful, I don't want her to feel forced to comfort me. If anyone has some advice on how to handle this, it would be much appreciated. Overall, this week could not have gone better, and I am exceedingly grateful to everyone who gave me the little push of courage I needed to send her that message. 1,000 times thank you. Edit. Just to clarify, she doesn't have a husband or kids, as I said in my first post. I only considered contacting her because there was no evidence of a partner on her social media, but I understand that my first post wasn't visible for a while, so I can see why that may not have been obvious. Sorry for the confusion. Update 2. I've had a lot of people ask for an update, so here it is. The last 2 months have gone by very fast. I told Daria that I was nervous about the video call, and she insisted on having it right away so that I could get it over with and stop worrying. Seeing her made everything feel real in a way it hadn't before. She still looks like herself or even more beautiful, different only in the sense that she is fully an adult now. The place she lives is very different from our home country, with a distinct culture to which she has assimilated. That she had time to adapt and feel completely at home in this place broke the illusion that no time had passed. In hindsight, that was probably the real reason I had been so nervous, because I could no longer occasionally forget myself and pretend that nothing had changed. The hardest part was not being able to reach through the screen and put my arms around her. Sitting there and watching someone you love cry from a distance is not easy. I barely noticed that I was crying too. She didn't seem surprised at my appearance, but she did eventually look me over and ask if the food was good where I lived. I explained about my jaw and that I'm getting it fixed. Less dental work is required than I thought, but I need a surgery. Her response was to ask for my address and order groceries to be delivered, including a lot of soft snacks that are easy to eat and these meal substitution drinks that are actually tasty. She sent them every week since, even though I tell her it's not necessary. When I wanted to pay her back, she laughed at me and said she owed me a lot of food because I had kept her from starving to death in university. I loved being able to cook for her, and I suppose it makes her just as happy to feed me now. We talk every day and have made video calls a regular habit. It does me so much good just to see her face, and the awkwardness is mostly gone now. It's easy to talk to her. Last night, she brought her computer into the kitchen and talked to me while doing the washing up. It's amazing how mundane things like that can make me feel normal and at home in ways I forgot I could. I never thought I'd be that stupidly happy to see someone washing coffee cups. I'm beginning to think that the idea of home as a physical place is a misconception. She likes to send photos to show me where she lives, what her life is like now. She was curious about how things are the same or different here. I didn't want to admit that I don't have much of a life to share back. Going places just didn't seem worth the effort. She is, though. At first, it was very small things. She would send a picture of a pastry she'd bought at a cafe, saying that she thinks her city has better pastries than mine. I would go out and get one so I could send her a photo too. Then it was beer, which city has better parks, interesting architecture, a department store, and so on. I figured out quickly that she was trying to coax me into going out more, but I played along to make her happy. I've seen more of my city in the past month than the entire time I've lived here before. I've been to the art museum and finally joined my colleagues for a beer. Usually, I go places for short durations at the less crowded times, but I'm still going, which is something. Daria used to be very sociable, so I thought that whatever happened, at least she wouldn't be lonely. I was wrong. There is a lot she could never tell her friends because they can't relate. They would feel sorry for her and cease to be equals. She says our experiences are different, but we are more able to understand each other than other people could, and despite her own burden, she has quietly picked up half the weight from my shoulders without ever being asked to. I am in awe of her simply for being the kind of person who would. For Women's Day, I sent her some orchids, and she was very happy that I remembered her favorite flower. The things I can do to make her smile are so small, and she deserves so much more than I know how to give her, but I would do anything for this woman, and I am learning. There are protests happening where she is, with riot police and tear gas. Whenever this happens, she feels nervous and has difficulty sleeping. Now, at least I can stay on the phone with her at night so she's not alone. Aside from the anxiety, there is also a sense of nostalgia. She talks about when that was us making noise in the street. I'm glad she has good memories too and doesn't have to be alone with them anymore. Finally, the reason I'm updating now. She is coming to visit. We were talking last night, and I mentioned that a church near me has special windows designed by an artist she loves, and I was thinking about going to see them eventually. She said it would be unfair of me to go without her, so I invited her to come with me, and then somehow it turned from vague future plans to being scheduled for next Saturday. She was going to come for the day, but I told her it was silly to travel so far to stay for such a short time and suggested she stay the entire weekend, so she will be here from Friday until Sunday. I haven't really had time to be nervous yet, but I'm sure I will. Thank you again to everyone who has given advice or encouragement. It is very much appreciated. Now on to the next story. Story 3. I came home early to find my wife cheating with a repairman in our living room while our baby was watching, so I filed for divorce and won custody. Now her family has disowned her. My wife and I were what you'll call the perfect couple. We loved each other so much and attended events, gatherings, weddings, church, and other social gatherings. Like I mentioned at the beginning of my story, we attended the same church. Being that she was a very devoted Christian, she attended church all the time and didn't live the kind of lifestyle other women on social media did. I believed she was the one for me. I liked her from the moment I set my eyes on her, and because she was the only woman I was attracted to since I moved into the city, I thought it was wise to talk to a couple of people before we became a thing, and they all guaranteed me she was a great girl. Indeed, she was a great girl. She was well-mannered, polite, pretty, and kind to other people, including strangers. She was a college graduate and worked as a vet assistant in one of the biggest vet shops in town. On my end, I worked with a marketing firm and built websites as a side job. Eventually, I got closer to her after observing her for a while, and we ended up dating. We dated for only a year and we got married. Initially, I thought I was making one of the best decisions of my life, but after things turned out the way they did, I realized I made a terrible mistake. After my wife and I got married, we had a son after a year, and our life seemed perfect. We were one big happy family, and I did my best to look after our son. Despite how much I tried to keep my family together and give them a good life, something always had to go wrong. The first thing that happened was that our 6-month-old son broke his left arm while my wife cared for him one weekend. That Saturday, I went to hang out with a couple of friends and then stopped to get groceries on my way back. When I got home, the first thing I heard was the loud cry of our son, and when I rushed to check what was going on, I met my wife trying to stop him from crying. According to her, she wanted to grab something from a neighbor's house, so she asked my 7-year-old nephew, who came over to stay with us that weekend, to look after the baby, and in the process of playing with our son while she was away, he broke his arm. I don't really get how. Maybe my nephew must have pulled his arm too hard or tried to throw him and grab him like we did in his presence. Funnily enough, when I returned home, my wife was all dressed, and it was odd for her to visit a neighbor looking all dressed. I suspected something was off, but at that time what was most important was getting our son back to good health, and achieving that took a while. By the time our son had recovered fully, the matter had died, and I could not bring it up again, although I tried to question my nephew. He was slightly shaken by what had happened, and his side of the story was not coordinating with my wife's. About a year after that, I noticed that my wife and I grew distant. We were both working hard to make ends meet, but it wasn't like our jobs changed. We still did the same job, worked the same hours, and split chores at home. And even though I was a bit difficult at times, I still loved her and treated her well. The reason we had issues was because she was just too careless and dirty. It was crazy for me to come home and see our son's removed diaper on a dirty plate in the sink, and the whole kitchen smelled terrible. There are also some things I cannot say here because of how embarrassing it was. Aside from her carelessness and not being as tidy as I wanted, we had no other issues. I also tried to make up to her whenever I started our fights and arguments so she wouldn't think I was maltreating or nagging her because of our age difference. All this while, I never thought my wife would cheat on me until I saw things with my own eyes. It was devastating because I loved her more than I loved myself, and I sacrificed a lot to make her happy. That day, I came home from work about an hour earlier because I wasn't feeling well. When I got home, I noticed that our repairman's company truck was parked in my driveway, which was odd, and because his vehicle was in the driveway, I was forced to park behind him. When getting to my porch, I heard very loud moaning from my living room, and I immediately knew what was happening. To be sure of what I heard, I pushed the door open with force, and my eyes saw something I couldn't get out of my head to date. My wife and the repairman were doing it on our couch, and our son was in the living room watching them. I was so mad that I grabbed our son first before I kicked the repairman out of our house, and I yelled at my wife to join him, but she refused. She begged me, knelt down, and cried like she was innocent. She held my legs and even rolled on the floor. If that wasn't enough, she told me she was sorry and didn't know what made her do it. She even tried to lie about it being their first time, but I was sure it wasn't. Without me saying it, she knew our next step would be a divorce, and before I even voiced it, she started begging me not to divorce her. She knew she had a reputation to keep, and that's why she begged me not to divorce her. I also knew she wanted our marriage, so I played a smart one on her. I told her I wouldn't divorce her if she told her friends, family, and the church the absolute truth about her affair with a repairman, and she agreed. I kicked her out of the house and took our son from her to avoid making her feel comfortable with the crime she had committed. Meanwhile, while the repairman was around, I threatened to report him to the organization he worked for, and I did. I had heard stories of repairmen and pizza delivery boys having affairs with married women, but I thought it was made up until it happened to me. Long story short, she exposed herself, and it turned out she was having an affair with him since the time our baby broke his arm. She lied and said she had gone out to get something from a neighbor, but in reality, she went out with him, leaving our son behind with a 7-year-old. When everyone heard this, they were so disappointed, and I still filed for a divorce and used her evidence against her in court. I also mentioned the part where she had our son in the living room while she was doing it with the repair guy, and I mentioned how careless she was to leave our baby with another child, which resulted in a broken arm. With all that presented, I won custody of our son. Meanwhile, her parents were so disappointed that they disowned her and wanted nothing to do with her anymore. Since then, she has been living with their rejection. As for the repairman, his company fired him, but I don't know if they carried on with their affair. The church had to suspend her for a while, but I left the church and moved to a different house. This happened 2 years ago, and right now, I have met someone who also has a daughter around my son's age, and we are taking care of the kids together. Now on to the next story. Story 4. Mom had an affair 18 years ago. I 18 am the product of it. My dad just informed me of all this and told me he will not pay for my college while my siblings got their college experience paid for by our dad. Pretty much the title. I have no idea how to process all this, and I am completely unprepared for what lies ahead. Both my older brother and sister went to the same college. My brother graduated 2 years ago. My sister is set to graduate in 2 years. Both had their college paid for by our dad. Dad paid all their college expenses, including rent, food, their cars, pocket money, you name it. My brother has a job now, his own place, lives together with his fiancée, and has his life together. My sister already has a good-paying job, and my dad still pays for almost everything for her. I got accepted to the same college, which was always the plan, and was looking forward to talking with my parents about the next steps and asking them to help me the same way they did for my siblings. I always assumed they had money put aside for my college, the way they had for my siblings. Instead, I was met with a story about my mom's cheating, how I am the result of her cheating, and how my dad is not willing to support me anymore moving forward. Dad told me that Mom had 18 years to let me know and prepare me for the future, but obviously she never did. He said it was never his place to say anything since I am not his son and didn't want to interfere with Mom's parenting. Apparently, my grandparents know I am not Dad's biological son, but they haven't bothered to tell me anything either. My siblings have no idea, and they are as surprised as I am because there was never a hint of anything being off. I might be naive, but I always thought I had a great relationship with my dad. We go to see sports together, we go fishing together. He tutored me when I had difficulties with math. Dad is an engineer, he taught me to drive. I never got a hint he stored resentment towards me. I mean, he gave me my name and has explained what my name means, and he was very proud of it. It's a story he tells from time to time. He likes to talk about stuff like that about me. My mom has never said a word about anything, and apparently she was supposed to have the talk with me, but she never did. I feel abandoned and unprepared for what lies ahead. I am not even sure I will be able to go to college anymore. I always assumed my parents will pay for it. I never had a job, and I am not sure what job I can even get to support me through college. I have no idea how to apply for loans. All my mom has done is cry and apologize, but nothing of substance. She has no idea how to help me. I don't even know if I'm welcomed home anymore. It's all up in the air. I feel shame leaving my room, and if I will be asked to move out, I don't know where to go. I don't have any savings, maybe $400 put together. I am angry at my mom. I am confused about where I stand with my dad. There's a man out there who is my father that never wanted to have anything to do with me. I feel rejected, and I have no idea what to do to fix this situation. Anyone have any idea what to do here? Do I apologize to my dad? What do I say to him? I don't know. I've been stuck in my room these past few days reading and browsing Reddit. I have no idea what to do. Edit. Comments are coming in faster than I can reply, but I am making a list with all the advice about financial aid, health insurance, getting my own phone plan, etc. Things I didn't even think about before. Thank you, everyone. I will try to answer as much as I can, but there are more comments than I can handle. Update 1. Sorry to disappear. Nothing bad happened to me. Managed to talk with my mom yesterday, but I chickened out halfway through what I had to say. The good news is that I am not being kicked out or disowned, etc. Thank you for all your support, everyone. I will follow through and call financial aid at my college in a few hours and take it from there. My grandpa had a stroke a week ago, and my dad is helping my grandma with setting up a live-in nurse, so he wasn't around yesterday. I will let you know how I manage. Thank you again. Update 2. Sorry for not updating. My grandpa passed away yesterday morning. Nothing happened to me, but my situation is a secondary concern right now. Regardless, I think I will be all right thanks to your amazing support and help. My sister is aware of everything and told me not to worry. She has my back and I have her support. I promise to update when and if there are any significant changes. Right now, I need to support my grandma. Thank you again to everyone. Update 3. Hey guys. An update has already been posted. Please don't message me so angrily anymore. Update 4. Mom had an affair 18 years ago. I 18am the product of it. My dad just informed me of all this and told me he will not pay for my college while my siblings got their college experience paid by our dad. July 13, 2019. The reaction to my original post put an uncomfortable amount of pressure on me to write this update. I am not sure if it's what you want to hear, but things are more or less back to a normal state if you consider other events. Unfortunately, my grandpa died at the beginning of this week, and I am still processing it. I did manage to talk with both my mom and dad, and I know where I now stand in relation to them as well as my siblings. I am not sure I would have had the courage to say what I had to say if not for the amount of help and advice in the comments. I think it is safe to say both my parents love me, and what happened 2 weeks ago was an overreaction to a fight between my parents. It makes me uncomfortable knowing I am not aware of my own environment, but a stranger in the comments can tell me what's happening in my life with only a few lines of text from my side. A lot of comments were spot on about what is happening in my life. I have so far gone through 40%, I estimate, of the comments, but I have given up. There are too many for me to keep up with. The conclusion is that I am definitely going to college. It will be the college I have always wanted to go to, and I will have the same experience as my siblings. The money to pay for all this already exists. My family is not going bankrupt as suggested. My dad just had a mental breakdown with all the issues around my grandpa and his fight with my mom. Even if my dad would have gone through with his decision, my grandma let me know my grandpa left me and my siblings some money. We will have to split it between the 3 of us, but enough to put me through college. What started the entire scandal was poor timing on my part. My parents just had a fight, and then I showed up saying, hey, pay for my college. My parents were talking about us, their children, and mom said something to the lines of, to think you wanted to split up when I came back pregnant or something like that. I was not there. This is what she told me. I guess dad was talking about how proud he was of his children, and mom wanted to express her gratitude for dad raising me as his own, and dad took it as the affair was the best decision I ever made or something like that, and their fight escalated from there. And mom told dad something like, what makes you think any of them are yours? Yeah, it went downhill from there fast. Shortly after that, my dumb face showed up, and here I am. Dad and mom have since made up. Mom is still a mess. Dad is not handling my grandpa's passing away too well either. I did talk with my siblings, and my sister raised a storm and wrote it here while blasting my parents on the phone, haha. My brother was calmer but made his feelings known in no uncertain terms as well once he got back home. My grandpa's passing away sort of kept spirits calm, I guess, and shifted the focus to dealing with that. Reading the comments was a mind-opening experience. I felt unprepared for the world out there. Many have asked how I had no idea how to apply for loans or grants. Well, in my defense, when you go year after year after year knowing you have nothing to worry about, that your college is as good as paid for already, you don't really have to worry about anything else. Of course, I knew there are loans and other things students have to be aware of, but it didn't apply to me. I went from, I'm going to college, can't wait, to you're not my son, and I will not pay for your college in less than 24 hours. Others have been prepared for this. At the very least, they knew they had to get a loan or get a job, look for a place to live, and so on. For me, it was a sudden change in reality. Going through the comments, I managed to put a list together with various tips and tricks. What jobs are available for students, how to find a place to live, how to get a credit card, a bank account, a cell phone plan, and so on. Really good stuff that I think even after the return to normal will help me. My parents have been called more names than they go by, and that was uncomfortable to read, and I haven't even read all the comments. I can't even imagine what else lies in the comments waiting. Dad is very sorry, apologetic about his reaction and behavior. I understand his reaction, but I still feel hurt by it. I understand he was not in the best place of mind, but I can't control my feelings either. We will be all right, and this hasn't irreparably damaged our relationship. Mom hasn't handled everything that well, but she is coming around, and she answered some more questions for me. When Mom had an affair years ago and got pregnant with me, my parents started divorce proceedings. Mom moved in with the man she had the affair with, but after a few months, the guy decided he wants nothing to do with it. He kicked Mom out and she had nowhere to go, so my grandparents took her in because she was still the mother of their nephews/grandkids. I am getting a lot of heat for this mistake, but no, in my family's culture, grandparents call their grandkids nephews as well. Mom and Dad got back together after a lot of work. Dad took me as his own, and that's my life since then. The man who is my natural father is not in the picture anymore. Dad didn't really know who he is, and Mom hasn't heard or seen him ever since. He was fully aware Mom was pregnant with his child. I guess he had more important things to do, but it doesn't sound like he was about to cure world hunger. She met him in a bar, not at a fundraiser, and I don't feel a need to know any more about who he is. I thought about the matter the last 2 weeks since I've been aware of everything and haven't really felt a desire to know who he is, where he is, if he is still alive, if I have other siblings out there. I was suggested to go and buy a DNA kit from 23andMe, maybe I can find him that way, but I think I will avoid doing this specifically so I don't find him or he finds me. As far as I care, I have a mom and dad and a brother and a sister, and that's my family moving forward. I do plan on getting a job and becoming more independent, but not in an attempt to distance myself from my family, but to feel like I would not be lost in the world if my family suddenly disappears. My mom admits I've been babied way more than my siblings, and that they should have prepared me more for what's coming next. I did learn where I stand with my family, and it's safe to say that I am loved and I have options. I thought I am isolated, but my world is wider than I thought. Grandparents, siblings, my aunt, my cousins, all have my back. I think my parents are human, and they make mistakes, and even though this was not their greatest moment, I think I will look at everything as nothing more than a weak moment in an otherwise wonderful relationship. Thank you. Edit. In my family's cultural background, grandparents call their grandkids nephews as well. Stop calling me names. It was not a mistake, please. Now on to the next story. Story 5. My stepmom tore my passport so that I can't go to Turkey with my dad. But then my dad did something which shocked my stepmom. I 18F just turned 18 yesterday, and my dad, John 45M, threw me a birthday party at our house. He invited our neighbors and some family members. It was a nice gesture, and I appreciated the effort he put into making my day special. I live with my dad, my stepmom Amelia, 40F, and my stepbrother Caleb, 14M. My dad loves me a lot, and we've always been close, especially since my mom passed away when I was younger. My relationship with Amelia, however, is complicated. She doesn't like me, though she's careful never to show it in front of my dad. I've known this for years, but I've never told my dad about it. I want him to be happy, and I don't want to bother him with what might seem like petty family drama. Plus, I'm afraid he might not believe me, or it could cause problems in his marriage. So I've always kept quiet about it. There have been several incidents over the years that have shown me Amelia's true nature. When I was 15, I got really sick at school. I had a high fever and couldn't stop throwing up. The school nurse called home to have someone pick me up. Amelia answered the phone, and I heard her tell the nurse she was too busy to come get me. She said she had errands to run and couldn't be interrupted. I ended up having to wait at school for 3 hours, lying on a cot in the nurse's office, until my dad could leave work early to come get me. When he arrived, he was upset that Amelia hadn't called him to let him know I was sick. She just shrugged and said she figured the school would call him if it was really important. Another time, when I was 16, Amelia threw away a box of my mom's old things that I kept in my closet. It had some of mom's jewelry, old letters she'd written to my dad when they were dating, and a scarf that still smelled like her perfume. When I realized it was gone and confronted Amelia, she claimed she thought it was trash. She said she'd seen an old box in my room while cleaning and assumed I didn't want it anymore. When I got upset, she just shrugged and said I should have kept it somewhere safer if it was so important. I cried for hours that day, and even though my dad tried to comfort me, I could tell he didn't want to believe Amelia had done it on purpose. Last year, I overheard Amelia talking to Caleb when they thought I was home. She was telling him that he was her real child and that she only put up with me for my dad's sake. She said she couldn't wait until I went off to college so they could be a real family without me around. It hurt to hear that, especially since I've always tried to be nice to both of them, even when Amelia was cold to me. Amelia's also forgotten to do my laundry multiple times, even when doing everyone else's. She'll wash and fold clothes for my dad and Caleb but leave mine in the hamper. When I ask about it, she always has an excuse. She didn't see my clothes, she thought I wanted to do my own laundry. She was going to get to it later. It's a small thing, but it's just another way she makes me feel unwelcome in my own home. When I was applying to colleges last fall, Amelia conveniently misplaced some of my application materials. I had asked her to mail a couple of packets for me while I was at school, and she said she would. But when I followed up with the schools, they said they never received my applications. I missed deadlines for 2 schools I really wanted to attend because of this. When I confronted Amelia, she acted confused and said she must have forgotten to mail them. She apologized, but it didn't seem sincere. I couldn't prove she'd done it on purpose, but given her pattern of behavior, I had my suspicions. Despite all this, I've tried to keep the peace for my dad's sake. He seems happy with Amelia, and I don't want to be the cause of problems in their marriage. So I've learned to keep my head down, avoid Amelia when I can, and count the days until I can move out for college. On my birthday, after the party was over and most of the guests had left, my dad surprised me by announcing that we're going on a trip to Turkey. I was shocked and excited because I've always wanted to go to Turkey. It was a dream I shared with my real mom before she passed away. My mom loved Turkish culture and had always wanted to visit Turkey with my dad and me. She used to tell me stories about the beautiful mosques in Istanbul, the otherworldly landscapes of Cappadocia, and the crystal-clear waters of the Turkish Riviera. We'd spend hours looking at travel magazines and planning our dream trip. I remember sitting with my mom when I was about 6 or 7, flipping through a big glossy book about Turkey. She'd point out pictures of the Blue Mosque and the Hagia Sophia, telling about their history and architecture. We'd look at photos of the Grand Bazaar, imagining ourselves wandering through the colorful stalls, bargaining for carpets and spices. Mom would describe the taste of authentic Turkish delight, promising we'd try every flavor when we finally made it there. Her eyes would light up when she talked about watching the sunset over the Bosphorus or taking a hot air balloon ride over the fairy chimneys of Cappadocia. It became our shared dream, something we talked about whenever one of us was feeling down or needed cheering up. We even started a savings jar for our turkey fund, and I'd put in my allowance money every week. But unfortunately, Mom had a car accident when I was 8 and died in the hospital a few days later. It was sudden and devastating. My dad was heartbroken and so was I. We leaned on each other a lot during that time, trying to cope with our grief and figure out how to move forward without her. In the months after Mom died, Dad and I would sometimes look at those same travel magazines and books about Turkey. It became a way for us to remember Mom and feel close to her. We talked about her excitement for the trip and promised each other that we'd go someday in her memory. It was painful, but it also gave us something to look forward to, a goal to work towards in her honor. But life has a way of getting in the way of plans sometimes. We didn't have enough money for such a big trip. Other times, Dad's work made it impossible for him to take enough time off. We talked about maybe going for my high school graduation, but then the pandemic hit and international travel became complicated. 4 years after my mom's death, when I was 12, my dad started dating again. That's when he met Amelia. At first, I was cautiously optimistic. I wanted my dad to be happy, and Amelia seemed nice enough in the beginning. But as she spent more time with us, I realized she didn't share our love of travel. She preferred staying close to home and complained whenever Dad suggested even a short trip out of state. This put our Turkey plans on hold indefinitely. Amelia always had a reason why we couldn't go. It was too expensive, too far, too dangerous. She'd suggest we go to a local beach instead or maybe take a road trip to the next state over. It was clear she didn't understand how important this trip was to Dad and me. Still, Dad and I never completely gave up on our dream of visiting Turkey together someday. We'd still talk about it sometimes, usually when Amelia wasn't around. It became our secret project, something just between us that kept us connected to Mom's memory. So when Dad announced the trip on my birthday, I was absolutely thrilled. It felt like a dream come true, a promise finally being fulfilled. But my excitement was tempered when Dad mentioned that only he and I would be going. Amelia and Caleb would stay at home. Don't get me wrong, I was happy it would just be Dad and me. It felt right, given the history of the trip and its connection to my mom. But I also immediately worried about how Amelia would react. Sure enough, Amelia got quite angry and jealous at first. She tried to play it cool, asking questions about the trip as if she was just curious. But I could see the tension in her face and the way her hands were clenched at her sides. Finally, she couldn't hold it in anymore and started a verbal fight with my dad. She said it wasn't fair that she and Caleb were being left out. She accused my dad of favoring me over his new family and said I was too old for a daddy-daughter trip. "We're supposed to be a family now, John," she yelled. "How do you think it makes Caleb feel to be excluded like this? And what about me? Am I just the babysitter while you go off and play happy family with your daughter?" Dad tried to explain that this was a special trip, something he and I had been planning for years, long before he met Amelia. He told her about Mom's love for turkey and how this trip was partly in her memory. But this only seemed to make Amelia angrier. "So that's it then," she spat. 10 years later, and I'm still competing with a ghost. When are you going to let her go and focus on the family you have now?" I stood there feeling awkward and guilty, even though I knew I shouldn't. Caleb had retreated to his room, clearly uncomfortable with the whole situation. The argument escalated, voices getting louder and louder. Suddenly, Amelia grabbed my passport from the table where Dad had put it earlier when he was showing me our itinerary. Before anyone could react, she tore it in half. We all stood there in shock for a moment. I couldn't believe what I'd just seen. Dad's face went red with anger, and he started yelling at Amelia, asking how she could do something so childish and spiteful. Amelia yelled back that she was sick of always coming second to his precious memories of my mom. She said she'd put up with it for years, but she was done being the villain in our family story. "If you walk out that door with her," Amelia screamed, gesturing at the torn passport on the floor, "don't bother coming back." Dad was so angry that he walked out of the house, saying he needed to clear his head. The slam of the front door echoed through the suddenly quiet house. I couldn't bear to stay downstairs with Amelia, so I ran up to my room and locked the door. As I sat on my bed, I could hear Amelia and Caleb talking downstairs. Amelia was saying that I had ruined everything by not including them in the trip. She told Caleb not to worry, that she'd make sure Dad canceled the whole thing. I felt a mix of emotions. Anger at Amelia for ruining what should have been a happy moment. Disappointment that our long-awaited trip might not happen. And guilt for being the cause of so much family drama. Part of me wondered if I was being selfish. Should I have insisted that Amelia and Caleb come too? Would that have made things better or worse? I know the trip was meant to be special for Dad and me, a way to honor Mom's memory and fulfill a long-held dream, but now I'm not sure what to do. I don't want to cause problems in my dad's marriage, but I also feel like Amelia crossed a line by destroying my passport. That's not something a reasonable adult does, no matter how upset they are. Dad hasn't come home yet, and I'm not sure what's going to happen now. Part of me still really wants to go on this trip. It's been our dream for so long, and it feels like this might be our last chance to do it, just the two of us, before I head off to college and our lives get even more complicated. But another part of me wonders if it's worth all this drama. Maybe I should just tell Dad to cancel the whole thing when he gets back. We could use the money to do something local, something that includes Amelia and Caleb. It wouldn't be the same, but at least it might keep the peace. I feel stuck between honoring my mom's memory and respecting Dad's new marriage. I don't want to be the reason he and Amelia split up, but I also don't think it's fair for Amelia to erase Mom from our lives or prevent us from taking this meaningful trip. So, Reddit, I turn to you for advice. Should I have pushed to include Amelia and Caleb from the start? What should I do now? Should I try to convince Dad to go through with the trip anyway? Or should I be the bigger person and suggest we cancel it? I'm lost and could really use some outside perspectives on this mess. Update. It's been 2 weeks since my last post, and a lot has happened. I wanted to update you all on the situation with my dad, stepmom Amelia, and our planned trip to Turkey. The night of my birthday, after Amelia tore up my passport, my dad stormed out of the house to clear his head. He didn't come back until late that night. I was still awake, too upset and anxious to sleep. I heard him come in and go straight to his study. He stayed in there for hours, and I could hear muffled arguments between him and Amelia. The next morning, things were tense. Amelia wouldn't look at me, and my dad seemed exhausted. He told me not to worry, that he would sort everything out. For the next week, I tried to stay out of the way as much as possible. I spent a lot of time in my room or out of the house with friends. When I was home, I could hear my dad trying to talk to Amelia, explaining the significance of the Turkey trip and why it was important to him and me. But Amelia wasn't having it. She kept insisting that we were excluding her and Caleb, that we weren't considering their feelings. She even started suggesting that I should move out, saying I was old enough now and it was time for them to be a real family without me. This hurt a lot, especially since the house belongs to my dad. It had been his and my mom's home before Amelia came into the picture. As the week went on, I could see my dad getting more and more frustrated. He tried to be patient with Amelia, but her stubbornness and hostility towards me were wearing him down. I felt guilty, thinking I was the cause of all this trouble. I even considered telling my dad to forget about the trip just to keep the peace. But then, about a week after my birthday, something changed. I noticed my dad spending a lot of time on the phone and in his study. He seemed more determined, less willing to give in to Amelia's demands. Finally, after about a week and a half of tension and arguments, my dad called a family meeting. He asked all of us, me, Amelia, and Caleb, to gather in the living room. When we were all seated, I could tell this was serious. My dad's face was stern, and he had a folder of papers in his hands. He started by addressing Amelia directly. He said he had tried for the past week to make her understand the importance of this trip to Turkey, but she wasn't willing to listen or compromise. He explained again how it was a long-standing promise between him and me, a way to honor my mom's memory. Then he dropped a bombshell. He told Amelia that he had been planning to change his will to give Caleb an equal share of inheritance with me. He wanted to treat us both fairly, even though Caleb wasn't his biological child. But after the events of the past week, he had changed his mind. My dad pulled out a document from his folder. I assume it was the will he had been planning to sign. To everyone's shock, he tore it up right there in front of us. Amelia gasped and started to say something, but my dad held up his hand to stop her. He explained that he had already made changes to his will. In the new version, Caleb wasn't going to get as much as originally planned. Most of Dad's wealth and inheritance would now go to me. He said this was his final decision. Amelia was furious. She accused my dad of being selfish and manipulative. She said he was using his money to punish her for standing up for her son. But my dad remained calm and firm. He said this wasn't about punishment but about realizing who truly cared about his happiness and respected his wishes. Then my dad turned to me and said something that made me want to cry with relief. He told me that he had already applied for a duplicate passport for me. As soon as it arrived, we were going to Turkey as planned, just the two of us. Amelia tried to argue more, but my dad shut her down. He said his decision was final, both about the will and the trip. If she couldn't accept it, he said, then maybe they needed to rethink their relationship. The meeting ended with Amelia storming out and Caleb following her, looking confused and upset. I felt bad for Caleb. None of this was his fault, and he was caught in the middle of adult problems. After they left, my dad and I talked for a long time. He apologized for not seeing sooner how Amelia treated me. He said he had been blinded by his desire to have a complete family again, but now he realized that Amelia had never truly accepted me as part of that family. We spent the next few days talking a lot about Mom, our memories of her, and our long-held dream of going to Turkey. It felt good to share these things openly without worrying about upsetting Amelia. Dad also started making concrete plans for our trip, looking at flights and hotels. Amelia has been mostly silent since the family meeting. She spends a lot of time out of the house or locked in her room. Caleb still talks to me, but I can tell he feels awkward about the whole situation. I've tried to assure him that none of this is his fault and that I don't blame him for anything. As for me, I have mixed feelings about everything that's happened. On one hand, I'm thrilled that Dad and I are finally going to take our trip to Turkey. It feels like we're fulfilling a promise to Mom, and I can't wait to experience all the things she used to talk about. On the other hand, I feel guilty about the fallout with Amelia and Caleb. I never wanted to come between Dad and his new family, even if Amelia wasn't always kind to me, and I worry about how this will affect Caleb in the long run. But mostly, I feel relieved and grateful. For years, I felt like an outsider in my own home, trying to shrink myself to avoid upsetting Amelia. Now, for the first time in a long time, I feel like my feelings and my connection with my dad are being prioritized. Dad and I are now waiting for my new passport to arrive. We've started planning our itinerary for Turkey, and Dad's even started learning a few Turkish phrases. It feels surreal that we're finally going to take this trip we've dreamed about for so long. I'm not sure what the future holds for our family. I don't know if Dad and Amelia will work things out or if this is the beginning of the end for their relationship. Part of me hopes they can find a way to reconcile, for Caleb's sake if nothing else. But another part of me is relieved at the thought of not having to walk on eggshells in my own home anymore. As for me, I'm focusing on enjoying this time with my dad and looking forward to our trip. I'm also starting to think more seriously about college and my future. This whole experience has made me realize how important it is to stand up for yourself and not let others diminish your worth. I want to thank everyone who responded to my original post. Your comments and support helped me see that I wasn't wrong for wanting this special time with my dad. You gave me the courage to stand firm in my feelings, even when Amelia was trying to make me feel guilty. I know there will probably be more drama and difficult conversations ahead. Amelia isn't likely to accept this new situation without a fight. But for now, I'm choosing to focus on the positive. I'm going to Turkey with my dad, fulfilling a dream my mom had for us. Whatever happens after that, I know my dad has my back, and that means everything to me. Thank you all again for your support and advice. I'll update again after our trip if there are any significant developments. Wish us luck. Now on to the next story. Story 6. I invited my bully stepbrother to my wedding. He humiliated me in front of everyone. I never thought I'd be sharing this story, but here I am. My name is Kim, 28F. And I'm about to tell you how my stepbrother, Nathan, 30M, ruined what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, my wedding day. It's a long and complicated story, so bear with me. To understand how we got here, we need to go back to when I was 10 years old. That was the year my mom, Maria, passed away from breast cancer. It was a devastating time for my dad, Steve, 55M, and me. Mom had been the glue that held our little family together. She was warm, funny, and had a way of making everyone feel special. After she died, our house felt empty and cold. For the next 3 years, Dad threw himself into his work as a way to cope with his grief. He'd leave early in the morning and come home late at night. I spent a lot of time with my grandmother or alone in the house, trying to fill the silence with TV shows or music. I missed my mom terribly, but I also missed my dad, who seemed to have disappeared into his own world of sorrow. Everything changed when I was 13. Dad came home one day with a big smile on his face, something I hadn't seen in years. He sat me down and told me he had met someone special, a woman named Linda, 52F. I was cautiously optimistic. Part of me was happy to see Dad smiling again, but another part felt guilty, as if we were somehow betraying Mom's memory. A few weeks later, I met Linda. She was nice enough, I suppose. She had a polite smile and brought me a stuffed animal as a gift. But what really caught my attention was the lanky teenager standing behind her, Nathan. Dad explained that Linda was a widow too, and Nathan was her son. They had lost Nathan's dad in a car accident 5 years ago. At first, I was excited about the idea of having a brother. I'd always been an only child and sometimes felt lonely. I thought maybe Nathan and I could be friends, that we'd have movie nights and inside jokes like the siblings I saw on TV shows. How wrong I was. From the very beginning, Nathan made it clear that he didn't like me, the idea of sharing his mom with a new family. The first time Linda and Nathan stayed over at our house, I woke up in the middle of the night to find Nathan in my room, rifling through my things. When I confronted him, he smirked and said he was just getting to know his new sister. It was creepy and invasive, and when I told Dad about it the next day, he brushed it off as Nathan being curious about his new home. That set the tone for our relationship. Over the next few years, Nathan would do things to upset me. accidentally spilling juice on my homework, mistakenly deleting my saved games on the PlayStation, forgetting to give me phone messages from my friends. Each time, he'd have an excuse ready, and each time, Dad and Linda would believe him over me. As we entered high school, Nathan's tactics became more sophisticated. He started spreading rumors about me at school, telling people I cheated on tests or that I had a crush on one of the teachers. He even managed to convince some of my friends that I had been talking badly about them behind their backs. Slowly but surely, my social circle shrank, and I found myself becoming more isolated. The worst part was that Nathan was always the perfect son and brother when adults were around. He'd offer to help Linda with the dishes or volunteer to mow the lawn for Dad. He got good grades and was popular at school. To the outside world, he was the ideal stepson and stepbrother. Only I saw his true colors. I tried talking to Dad about it multiple times, but he always had the same response. Try harder to get along with Nathan, or he's had a tough time too, you know. It was as if he couldn't or wouldn't see what was really going on. Things came to a head during my senior year of high school. I had been working hard on my college applications, dreaming of escaping to a school far away from Nathan and the tension at home. One day, I came home to find my laptop open on the kitchen table with Nathan sitting in front of it. He had a smug look on his face as he told me he had been proofreading my college essays for me. When I checked, I found that he had deleted all my essays and replaced them with poorly written, plagiarized versions. I was devastated. I had spent months working on those essays, pouring my heart into them. With the application deadlines looming, I didn't have time to rewrite everything from scratch. I confronted Nathan in front of Dad and Linda, telling them exactly what he had done, but Nathan put on an Oscar-worthy performance, crying and saying he was just trying to help and must have accidentally saved over my files. Once again, Dad and Linda believed him over me. That was the last straw. I ended up having to scramble to submit rushed, mediocre applications. I still got into college, but not the schools I had been hoping for. The day I left for college was one of the happiest of my life. I was finally free from Nathan's constant torment. Over the next few years, I limited my contact with my family. I came home for major holidays, but I always made sure to have an excuse to leave early. I built a new life for myself, made new friends, and started to heal from the years of gaslighting and emotional abuse. Then, 2 years ago, I met Ryan, 29M. He was different from anyone I'd dated before. Kind, understanding, and patient. For the first time, I felt truly seen and valued. When he proposed last year, I was over the moon. We started planning our wedding, and I was determined to make it perfect. Against my better judgment, I decided to invite Nathan to the wedding. Part of me hoped that maybe, just maybe, he had grown up and changed. I wanted to believe that we could put the past behind us and start fresh. I even asked him to give a speech at the reception, thinking it might be a way for us to bond. The wedding day arrived, and everything seemed perfect. The venue was beautiful, the weather was gorgeous, and I felt like a princess in my dress. The ceremony went smoothly, and for a moment, I let myself believe that nothing could go wrong. But then came the reception and Nathan's speech. It started innocently enough, with some childhood memories and jokes, but then he started bringing up embarrassing stories from my past, twisting them to make me look bad. He mentioned my ex-boyfriends, implying I had a questionable dating history. The final blow came when he said that Ryan was settling for me and that he hoped I wouldn't disappoint him like I had disappointed our family. The room fell silent. I could feel everyone's eyes on me, a mix of pity and shock on their faces. Ryan squeezed my hand under the table. His jaw clenched in anger. Dad just sat there, looking uncomfortable but doing nothing to stop Nathan, and Linda was actually smirking, as if she was enjoying the show. I couldn't take it anymore. I got up and ran out of the hall, tears streaming down my face. Ryan followed me, along with my best friend and maid of honor, Sarah, 28F. They tried to console me, but I was inconsolable. The day I had dreamed about since I was a little girl had been ruined, and once again, Nathan was the culprit. It's been a week since the wedding, and I'm still trying to process everything. Ryan has been incredibly supportive, but I can tell he's angry, too. Dad has called a few times, leaving voicemails about how Nathan didn't mean it and how I should forgive him for the sake of family unity. Linda sent me a text saying I was overreacting and that I needed to stop being so sensitive. I feel like I'm at a crossroads. Part of me wants to cut ties with all of them, Dad, Linda, and especially Nathan, but another part feels guilty about the idea of leaving Dad. He's not a bad person, just weak when it comes to standing up to Nathan and Linda. I don't know what to do. Should I try to forgive Nathan for the millionth time? Should I give Dad another chance to make things right? Or is it time for me to prioritize my own happiness and well-being, even if it means leaving behind the only family I have left? I'd appreciate any advice or thoughts. Thanks for reading this incredibly long post. Writing it all out has been cathartic in a way. I just hope I can find a way forward from here. Date 1. It's been a month since my last post, and a lot has happened. First, I want to thank everyone for their supportive comments and advice. Your words really helped me gain perspective on the situation and gave me the courage to take action. After a lot of soul-searching and many long conversations with Ryan, I decided that I couldn't let Nathan's behavior slide this time. It was time to set some firm boundaries and demand accountability. Here's what I did. I started by writing a long, detailed email to my dad. In it, I laid out every instance of Nathan's bullying and mistreatment over the years, from the small incidents when we were kids to the major ones like sabotaging my college applications. I explained how his constant dismissal of my concerns had enabled Nathan's behavior, and how deeply hurt I was that he didn't stand up for me at the wedding. I told him I needed space and that I wouldn't be in contact until he took concrete steps to address the situation. Next, I blocked Nathan and Linda's numbers and removed them from all my social media accounts. It was surprisingly liberating to know that I wouldn't have to deal with their guilt-tripping messages or passive-aggressive comments anymore. The hardest part was deciding what to do about the wedding incident. After discussing it with Ryan and consulting with a lawyer friend, we decided to pursue a civil suit against Nathan for intentional infliction of emotional distress. It's not about the money. We just want Nathan to face real consequences for his actions, for once in his life. The aftermath of these decisions has been interesting, to say the least. Word got out in our extended family and social circle about what happened at the wedding and our subsequent actions. The reactions have been mixed. Most of my friends and colleagues have been incredibly supportive. Sarah, my maid of honor, even organized a do-over reception for us with our closest friends. It was a beautiful, intimate gathering that helped heal some of the wounds from the ruined wedding reception. My mom's side of the family, who never really liked Linda and Nathan, have rallied around me. My Aunt Nancy, 58F, my mom's sister, even offered to help pay for our legal fees. She told me a story I'd never heard before. She had tried to warn my dad about remarrying too quickly after Mom's death. Apparently, she had some concerns about Linda from the beginning, but Dad was too caught up in his newfound happiness to listen. Some of my dad's relatives have been less supportive. My cousin Mark, 35M, who has always been close to Nathan, called me petty for suing and said I should let bygones be bygones. I promptly blocked him, too. It hurt to cut off more family members, but I'm learning that sometimes it's necessary for my own well-being. An unexpected development came when Nathan's biological father, William, 54M, reached out to me. I had only met William a handful of times over the years. He and Linda had a pretty acrimonious divorce, and he wasn't very involved in Nathan's life. William apologized for Nathan's behavior and shared some insights into Nathan's childhood before he came to live with us. According to William, Nathan had some serious behavioral issues even as a young child. He was prone to violent outbursts and had been in therapy for anger management since he was 6. William admitted that he had struggled to handle Nathan's issues, which was part of why he had distanced himself after the divorce. He said he felt guilty for not being more present in Nathan's life and wondered if things might have been different if he had been. While this information doesn't excuse Nathan's actions, it does provide some context. It also makes me angry all over again at Dad and Linda for not addressing Nathan's issues head-on and for allowing him to torment me for years. As for my dad, he finally broke his silence last week. He sent me a long email apologizing for his inaction over the years. He admitted that he had always found it easier to placate Nathan than to discipline him, and he realized now how much that had hurt me. He said that losing Mom had made him terrified of conflict, and he had convinced himself that keeping the peace at any cost was the best way to hold our blended family together. Dad also revealed something I hadn't known. Apparently, shortly after he and Linda got married, she had threatened to leave him if he ever sided with me over Nathan. He said he was ashamed that he had allowed her ultimatum to influence his behavior, and that he realized now how unfair it had been to me. He's agreed to go to family counseling with me without Nathan or Linda to work on our relationship. I'm cautiously optimistic about this. I love my dad, and I want to believe that he can change, but I'm also wary of getting my hopes up too high. Linda, on the other hand, has been on a warpath. She's been calling every family member she can, spinning a story about how I'm tearing the family apart with my vindictiveness. Some people are buying it, but most see through her act. It's been eye-opening to see how many people have apparently been waiting for an opportunity to distance themselves from Linda and Nathan. Nathan himself has been surprisingly quiet. From what I've heard through the grapevine, he's laying low at a friend's place. Part of me wonders if he finally realizes the gravity of what he's done. But I'm not holding my breath. I've spent too many years hoping he would change, only to be disappointed. As for Ryan and me, we're doing okay. The whole ordeal has been stressful, but it's also brought us closer together. Ryan has been my rock through all of this, offering unwavering support and reminding me that I deserve to be treated with respect. We're planning a small vow renewal ceremony for our first anniversary, surrounded only by those who truly support us. It feels like a chance to reclaim our wedding day and create new, positive memories. I'll keep you updated as things progress with the legal case and the family counseling. Thank you again for all your support. It means more than you know. Update 2. Hey everyone. It's been about 6 months since my last update, and I wanted to fill you in on what's been happening. The biggest news is that our legal case against Nathan has been settled out of court. His lawyer reached out to ours about a month ago, proposing a settlement. After some negotiation, we agreed to the terms. I can't disclose the exact details due to the agreement, but I can say that it involved significant financial compensation and a legally binding promise from Nathan to stay away from us. The money wasn't really the point for us, so we've decided to donate most of it to a local charity that works with troubled youth. It feels like a way to turn this negative experience into something positive. The charity has a program that provides counseling and support for kids from dysfunctional families, which feels particularly meaningful given our history. As for my relationship with my dad, things are complicated. We've been attending family counseling sessions together, and it's been a roller coaster of emotions. I've learned a lot about my dad's own struggles with guilt after my mom's death and how that influenced his permissive parenting of Nathan. In one particularly intense session, Dad revealed that he had always felt guilty about remarrying so soon after Mom's death. He said that in the early days of his relationship with Linda, he had convinced himself that making the new family work was a way of honoring Mom's memory, that she would have wanted him and me to be happy. This led him to overcompensate by trying to make sure Nathan and Linda felt fully accepted, often at my expense. We've also delved into my childhood memories, and it's been painful to revisit some of those experiences. I've realized that I had internalized a lot of the blame for the family dysfunction, always trying to be the good child in hopes of winning Dad's attention and approval. Recognizing this pattern has been difficult, but it's also been the start of some real healing. Dad has been making efforts to rebuild our relationship. He's been more proactive in reaching out, asking about my life, and actually listening to my responses. He's also started to share more stories about Mom, which has been bittersweet but healing. It's clear he's trying, but there's still a long way to go. Linda continues to be a thorn in my side. She's still trying to paint me as the villain in all this, but fewer and fewer people are buying her story. Last month, she showed up unannounced at my workplace, causing a scene. She was yelling about how I had stolen her son and ruined her family. Thankfully, my boss was understanding and had security escort her out. I've since filed for a restraining order against her. On a brighter note, Ryan and I had our vow renewal ceremony last weekend. It was everything our wedding should have been: intimate, joyful, and drama-free. We held it in a beautiful garden with just our closest friends and family in attendance. We wrote our own vows, and there wasn't a dry eye in the house. It felt like a fresh start for us and a way to reclaim the celebration that was stolen from us. My relationship with my extended family has shifted quite a bit. Some relatives who initially sided with Nathan have come around after hearing the full story. Others have shown their true colors and are no longer a part of my life. It's been a painful process of pruning toxic relationships, but I feel lighter for it. Aunt Nancy has become a huge source of support. She's been sharing stories about my mom that I'd never heard before, helping me feel connected to her memory in a way I haven't in years. She's also been a voice of reason when I start to doubt myself or feel guilty about the family rifts. As for Nathan, I haven't heard anything directly from him since the settlement. Part of me is curious about whether he's changed or sought help, but I remind myself that it's not my responsibility to find out. I'm focusing on my own healing and moving forward with my life. Ryan and I are talking about starting a family soon. The whole experience has made us realize how important it is to create a loving, supportive home for our future children. We're committed to breaking the cycle of dysfunction that plagued my childhood. Thank you all for your continued support throughout this journey. Your advice and encouragement have been invaluable. I'll post another update if anything significant happens, but for now, I'm looking forward to a quieter, drama-free future with Ryan. Update 3. Hello everyone. It's been almost a year since my last update, and I wanted to share some final thoughts and developments with you all. Life has settled into a new normal for Ryan and me. We're expecting our first child, a little girl, due in about 4 months. The pregnancy has brought up a lot of emotions, especially about family and the kind of parents we want to be. We're both committed to creating a loving, stable home for our daughter, free from the kind of drama and hurt I experienced growing up. My relationship with my dad has continued to evolve. We're still in family counseling, and while things aren't perfect, they're better than they've been in years. He's excited about becoming a grandfather and has been making efforts to be more present and supportive. Last month, we had a breakthrough in therapy when Dad finally acknowledged how his actions and inactions had affected me throughout my childhood and teen years. He broke down crying, saying he wished he could go back and do things differently. It was a powerful moment, and while it doesn't erase the past, it feels like a solid foundation for rebuilding our relationship. Dad has also been standing up to Linda more. When she tried to insert herself into our baby shower plans, insisting that she should be involved as the baby's grandmother, Dad firmly told her that she wasn't welcome. It was the first time I'd ever seen him directly contradict her, and it meant a lot to me. Speaking of Linda, the restraining order against her was granted. She's not allowed to contact me or come near our home or my workplace. It's been a relief not having to worry about her showing up unexpectedly, trying to cause more drama. Aunt Nancy has been amazing throughout the pregnancy. She's been sharing Mom's old baby books with me, telling me stories about when Mom was pregnant with me. It's bittersweet. I wish more than ever that Mom was here to experience this with me, but it's also healing to feel this connection to her. As for Nathan, I received an unexpected letter about 3 months ago. It was from a rehabilitation center where, apparently, Nathan has been receiving treatment for alcohol addiction and behavioral issues. The letter was part of his 12-step program, where he was making amends to people he had hurt. In the letter, Nathan acknowledged the pain he had caused me over the years and at the wedding. He didn't make excuses but took full responsibility for his actions. He wrote about his struggles with anger and addiction and how he's been working to understand the root causes of his behavior. He also said he understood if I didn't want to have any contact with him and that he would respect my wishes either way. I'll be honest, the letter stirred up a lot of complex emotions. Part of me was glad to see he was getting help, but another part was angry that it took this long and caused me so much pain. After discussing it with Ryan and my therapist, I decided not to respond for now. Maybe someday in the future, I'll be ready to have a conversation with Nathan, but for now, I'm focusing on my own family and healing. Ryan and I have been busy preparing for the baby's arrival. We've moved to a new house in a family-friendly neighborhood, and we're slowly building a community of friends and supportive people around us. It feels like we're finally creating the kind of life and family environment I always wished for as a child. We've been attending birthing classes and parenting workshops together. Sometimes I find myself getting anxious about whether I'll be a good mother, given my complicated family history, but Ryan always reassures me, reminding me that being aware of the past is the first step in making sure we don't repeat it. Looking back on everything that's happened since that disastrous wedding day, I can see how far I've come. I've learned to set boundaries, to stand up for myself, and to surround myself with people who truly care about me. It hasn't been an easy journey, but I'm proud of where I am now. As I prepare to become a mother myself, I find myself reflecting on my own childhood and the kind of parent I want to be. I'm determined to create a home filled with love, understanding, and open communication. All the things I wished for as a child. Thank you all for being part of this journey with me. Your support and advice have been a lifeline during some of the darkest moments. I probably won't be posting any more updates after this, but I want you all to know how much your kindness has meant to me. Here's to new beginnings and breaking cycles of hurt. Wishing you all the best. Now on to the next story. Story 7. Joke broke up my friend's marriage after she mistook another child for mine at the pool, unaware of their past family drama. Me and my wife have a 5-year-old son. Our group of friends is mostly couples with kids, as we are nearing our 40s. And so, a lot of our meetings with friends now include meeting up as entire families, kids included. This can sometimes mean a lot of adults and a lot of kids. One person in this group, Emma, fake name used to be my roommate in college. She was married and has her own kids, and we hang out with her and her husband sometimes in a group setting, but rarely on our own. Emma also tends to run late. Often this is all relevant to the story. As our son is an only child, we sometimes worry that he wouldn't really learn to share or get along with other kids. To prevent this, and while I love spending time with him, I would sometimes preemptively nudge him to engage with other kids when we are in public playgrounds, or at the beach or the pool. To that end, when I buy him a water pistol or an RC car or the like, I'd often just buy 2 or 3. I'd get to the playground and play with him, and when another kid would show interest in the toys, I'd just go, "Oh, you want to play with us?" and hand him the remote or the pistol or the whatever, thus getting the kids to play. This works great quite often, and I have a generally good relationship with the parents at our neighborhood. This is also relevant. One day, like a year back, me and my wife were planning on taking our kid to the pool. I pack my large bag of pool toys. Emma texts me. Her husband is away that day and she's looking for something to do with the kids. I talk to my wife and tell Emma we're going to our local pool, and she's welcome to join us, but we're planning on heading there early, so she can just join us whenever we arrive. We arrive at the pool pretty early and get a really good spot poolside, right by the shallows. I grab some water pistols and me and my kids start playing world domination. I am trying to take over the world and can only be stopped through the power of water pistols. It's a whole thing. Kid loves it. Soon another kid is there. It's a kid from my son's kindergarten class. He's there with his mom. He is, of course, welcome to join us. We know the family. The mom and my wife are pretty friendly, and our kids play together often. So my wife says she wants to go for a swim, and the kid's mom says she wants to join her and asks me if I'm okay watching the kids. I say sure, since by this point the kids are blasting each other with water pistols and I'm just chilling poolside, just occasionally having to call out, "Oh no, my plans for world domination ruined," because sometimes that's just what parenting is. Then Emma and her kids show up. She is really happy to see me, and I give out toys to her kids. All is going well. Then my son's friend runs up and asks for some other toy, and I go, "Sure thing," and hand it to him. Emma goes, "Oh my God, so cute. He looks just like you." I laugh and say, "Okay, cool, but this isn't my kid." Now, in her defense, the kid does look kind of like me, making it kind of hilarious. When my wife and the kid's mom come back, I tell them the story. They also find it hilarious. We all have a friendly chuckle, but think little of it. Fast forward to a few months ago. I haven't seen Emma in a while. We are at a friends group gathering and it was a good time all around. When we're about to call it a day, me and Emma are at the entrance. She's grabbing her stuff and I'm on my second trip from the car, kids' toys, kids' clothes, dirty dishes, Tupperware with leftovers, etc. And I call out to Emma's husband, "Hey, can you call my wife and kid over? Just make sure it's actually my kid and not some random kid who kind of looks like me." I think it's a hilarious callback. He seems confused and kind of angry. He asks what the hell I'm talking about. Why would he call a random kid? I'm also confused, so I tell him the pool story. He doesn't laugh. Emma doesn't laugh either. The entire thing now feels kind of awkward. I awkwardly say goodbye, go grab my wife and kid myself, and we leave. Later that day, I text Emma to ask if everything is all right. I get no reply. I text again a few days later, no reply. I get the distinct sense I messed up, but also if she doesn't want to talk to me, I'm not going to force the issue. I leave well enough alone. At worst, I thought she was mad at a joke I made, which was apparently in poor taste. Boy, howdy, did I underestimate the fallout of this joke. A few days ago, I arrive at a friend's place, and she's there. This is an engagement party, so no kids. I wasn't supposed to come but decided last minute, and my wife was at home with our kid. Emma sees me and is livid. She wasn't expecting to. She only came because she thought I wouldn't be here. She does, however, take the opportunity to tear me a new one. Though she calls me out in front of everyone because of my joke. Originally said with air quotes. Her husband was furious, from what she said and what I gathered from mutual friends afterward. She previously commented on someone else's kid looking like someone who wasn't his father. Except that whole thing led to family drama in Emma's husband's family because, in that case, that dude was cheating and that was his kid, and a whole bunch of people were really hurt in the aftermath. Emma's husband was furious because he apparently thought she would know better than to comment on kids looking like people again. This sent them down a spiral, especially because the husband apparently thought she told me that other family story and that I was mocking him for his family drama, and he thought the story I told was just covering for her. When I realized I messed up, this was not the case. I had no idea that whole thing happened. Still, he didn't believe Emma when she told him, so they are now separated. She calls me an asshole and says I ruined her marriage. I am not a confrontational person. I apologize profusely. I say I didn't know, and if she didn't want me telling the story, she should have said something. She tells me I'm making excuses. This is now a scene. I apologize profusely again and leave quickly after offering a couple of quick congratulations. I am later told this was anything but something anyone could talk about at the party, and now the engaged couple are mad at me too. Emma is even more mad because now everyone knows her drama. I am unfriended and unfollowed on everything. Some friends think I couldn't have known better and the joke was pretty benign. Other friends say it was in really poor taste to throw her under the bus, and I am totally the asshole. Emma's best friend, who I also know from college, thinks I did know about the thing with her husband and now I'm just covering my own ass to get away with being cruel. It has been a few days and some of my friends will no longer talk to me. Others think she is wrong to blame me and that the marriage was doomed anyway. Still, I feel really guilty about making the joke, and I obviously wouldn't have made it had I known the trouble it would cause. I like Emma, and I didn't want to hurt her. I also liked her husband. I'd like to say that maybe he was wrong to let the marriage implode like that because of a stupid joke. But at the same time, I don't exactly know his family drama and their history, nor the specifics of his relationship with Emma, so I can't really say he's wrong or overreacting. The entire thing just kind of sucks. My wife sort of got my back though. She thinks the joke was hilarious and actually thinks me breaking up their marriage makes it even funnier because WTF. She also loves crazy Reddit stories, so she sent me to post this, so at least I got that going for me, which is nice. Update 1. I thought I was a regular person living a normal life. Turns out I am Chaz, a side character on the worst Gossip Girl episode ever written. So, after posting, yes, today, reading replies and thinking it over, I decided to reach out to Emma one final time. Some of you thought I shouldn't. These were, in fact, not my monkeys. Others made me realize that Emma was probably in a shitty situation with her husband and his family and was actively being gaslit. Now, of note here, while, as I mentioned, we're not as close as we used to be very close. She helped me pick out a spot and let me borrow her car for my first date with who later became my wife. She was a significant part of my support system during some very rough times in my life. Despite everything, I still felt like I cared about her and wanted to work things out. This is no longer the case. See, from my perspective, I thought we were good friends. Then when she met her husband, we naturally drifted apart, and then this thing happened out of nowhere. This was not what it looked like from her perspective. How do I know? Well, buckle up, because this is absolutely unhinged. So, last night before going to bed, I text her a long, thoughtful message. I explained that I do apologize for the part one played in ruining her marriage, and I understand she is going through a tough time. I understand if she wants nothing more to do with me, but if and when she feels she wants to talk it out, she is welcome to reach out, and I leave the ball in her court. I show this to my wife and she is practically giddy. She tells me there is no way this shit doesn't blow up in my face, and I should have just cut my losses like many of y'all said. Emma shows up at my house at around 7 a.m., unannounced. I ask WTF. She says she really needs to talk to me. I call my wife to the door and explain this. She sends me off with this woman because she understands this shit can only go poorly, and apparently she is here for it, and it's my own fault at this point. So, as I said, from my perspective, we were friends, we drifted apart. From her perspective, for the last 15 years, she has been playing some weird game of 4D chess or 2 different games of 4D chess. Apparently, she had feelings for me back in college, and she was trying to nice girl her way into a relationship with me by being there for me when my dad died and when I was struggling with being single. She always gave everything because she just assumed I would at some point come around. You'd think that me getting married or her getting married would change that, and it did, just badly. Apparently, her husband knew about her feelings, which is why he always kept me at a distance. We never drifted apart. He explicitly asked her not to meet with me anymore outside of large social gatherings. That day at the pool? Yeah, that was her sticking it to him because he was away cheating on her or something, and he didn't like her hanging around me. Scandalous. It wasn't just that he was upset at the joke. He was upset because apparently I was having an affair with his wife and rubbing it in his face. Makes no sense, I know. It gets worse. That thing at the wedding? Well, at least she didn't plan that. I told our friends getting engaged that I wasn't coming. She asked and verified this. She wasn't expecting to see me, and they told her I wouldn't be there. But once I showed up, she decided to exploit it. She intended to have a huge scene with me so that she could tell her estranged husband and friends that I ambushed her because she broke off our affair. Our affair. Apparently, we had an affair. Oh, what affair is that, you ask? I did too, apparently. The story some people got was that she and I were having an affair, and it ended and I was stalking her. Her husband left her because he found out, so people more inclined to believe her just thought that was what happened and wanted nothing to do with me anymore. So why did her husband actually leave? Well, some of you called it. According to her, he was cheating on her a bunch and overall not a nice person. She never actually cheated on him, but you're supposed to pretend that she did without my knowledge. So, after the joke at the gathering, which may have indeed been in poor taste, they had a huge fight and he left the house. As for the thing with his family, from what I gather, it was some dude sleeping with his cousin's wife or some such shit. So anyway, she tells me all this insanity and tops it off with that my message really moved her, and we can still be friends. The reason she rushed to show up at 7 a.m.? My message made her realize I'm actually the only one who really cares about her, and everyone else in her life is fake and doesn't really care. I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, but now this sounds like some really manipulative shit to me, and now I'm thinking back to a lot of our previous interactions, and a lot of them also seem like that to me now. I am not a confrontational person. I was willing to accept that I messed up. Maybe some of you were right and the joke was in poor taste and I'm a huge asshole for making it because I thought that if he knew the story, he would get the call back, and if he didn't, I'd tell him a funny story about his wife. I accept all that criticism. But this shit? No. I was done. I tell her I am done with her shit. She can get back with her husband, leave her husband, keep any friend she wants because I am fucking done. I can forgive a lot, but she had been basically not communicating with me for over 15 years. I was telling her everything about my life and my feelings, and I was absolutely appalled by just how much of a one-way street it turned out to be. I feel like I didn't ever really know her. Maybe I played a role in that too. Maybe I was self-centered or selfish and didn't consider her emotions or her signs. I don't know, and you know what? At this point, I don't think it matters. She lied to me so much. She lied to so many people so much. I just don't care anymore. I don't think there's anything left to this friendship to fix. And the worst part? I just gave you this huge update, and I genuinely don't know how much of it is true. Maybe she was completely honest with me. Maybe she lied about everything and we're still playing 4D chess. Who knows? I certainly don't, and that, more than anything, is why this friendship is over, because even if I could forgive everything, I can never really trust her. So that's that. There will probably not be any more updates because this was meant to be a lighthearted post, and it turned into a total clusterfuck, and I'm just so tired and so sad. I'm sorry if this wasn't as readable or as coherent as my previous post. This just happened, and I am just exhausted. My wife has been very supportive though. I assume at some point I'm due some well-earned "I told you so." She knows there wasn't an affair and certainly no stalking, and most of my friends probably know that too. I may try reaching out to some others because, well, I don't know, maybe they were told even worse things about me. But I am just done with this, and now I'm gonna spend what's left of this weekend with my family and try to put this shit behind me. Now on to the next story. Story 8. Discovered my fiancé fathered my brother during a fling with my mom. Now I've cut them both out of my life. My fiancé, 25, male, and myself, 24, F, have been together since we were 17–18 years old. Honestly, he was always kind, handsome, funny, and everyone used to say I was so lucky to have the whole package. I felt so lucky too. He always treated me with love and respect. So this makes everything just so shocking for me. I have always had a good relationship with my mom. It has always been her and I against the world. My dad died in an accident when I was little. We always joked we are the real-life Rory and Lorelai from Gilmore Girls. My mom dated guys on and off and they were usually cool, but nothing really past the early stages. Around 4 years ago, my mom told me she was pregnant, which was a huge surprise. My mom was around 42 years old and also, she was sort of dating someone recently, didn't meet the guy but knew she went on dates. It still was a big shock. She never thought she could be pregnant at her age. She had me when she was super young and obviously I can tell she was stressed and worried. I decided to support her since she has always supported me and tried to reassure her. She then had my brother who is now 3 years old. I have a close relationship with my brother. I helped take care of him since he was born, and I just love the little guy. My fiancé was also always helpful with my brother. We would take him out for ice cream, playground, pool time during summer, etc. But nothing was weird. He was just my then BF spending time with my brother and me. Now, to the how I found out. My fiancé and I lived together since we finished college. My fiancé was not at home since he was hanging out with friends. But I was home because I didn't feel like going out and just wanted to chill on my sofa. At some point during watching a series on Netflix, my laptop died, and I was too lazy to go get my charger, so I just took my fiancé's iPad. I know the password, but honestly, never used it before. The iPad logged in, and I got a bunch of messages pinging. I guess he hasn't used it in a while too. Anyways, this got my attention, and I went to check it out. Of course, I found everything. My mom's number wasn't under her name, but I recognized the number and verified it with my phone. She was telling him she felt guilty and that I should know. He said he also felt guilty but couldn't lose me, and they fucked/it up. She said that it was unfair for my brother to never know his dad and that if he could live having his son around, not behaving like a dad but a brother-in-law. I broke down. What the actual fuck? There weren't a lot of older messages, just some photos stored of my brother as a newborn, my mom pregnant, and more photos of my brother growing up in an album. I couldn't anymore. I cried for what it seemed ages and I waited for my BF to come back home. I wish I was one of those women that can pretend and get things together before confronting the cheater, but I can't. He came back later that night around 3:30, and I just gave him the iPad with the conversation opened and saw his face completely go pale. I asked for an explanation when, how, why, and he didn't want to at first but knew he had to. Apparently, a few years back, while I was traveling with some friends, girls' trip, my fiancé and mom had dinner together. This isn't strange since he has been part of the family for so long. Sometimes mom and fiancé would eat together at our place even if I was busy with sports or out. I did the same with his parents. Somehow unclear how since he couldn't explain it well. One thing led to another, and they ended up sleeping together. They felt guilty, but apparently not guilty enough because they slept together 2 to 3 more times, using the excuse of meeting up to discuss how to tell me. Apparently, when my mom got pregnant, they stopped sleeping together and decided not to tell me since my fiancé loved me and couldn't lose me, and my mom didn't want to lose her daughter. So here we are now with 2 of the most disgusting humans. I obviously broke the engagement, told my mom to never talk to me again, and moved in with a friend. I feel bad for my brother since I really love him, but I can't be around him now. I just can't. I feel like it would remind me of all those times we talked about having kids. I would be his baby mama, only baby mama. We talked about this future since we were 17 years old, so I want to puke every time I think how I was actually taking care of his child with someone else while still having those dreams. I want to puke. Update 1. As I was afraid, I was indeed confronted near my office this week. I knew this was coming but thought maybe I had more time. My ex was the person to come find me yesterday. When, after finishing work and walking to where my car was parked, my ex was sort of lingering, waiting around. I thought about running, not gonna lie, but I guess in the moment I felt strong enough to get over with it instead of having that hanging above my head, waiting to be approached again. He asked if we could talk, and I said yes, but I didn't feel like having that conversation over coffee like we were old friends. Felt ridiculous, so I told him to just talk right there. We were in the streets, but somehow it wasn't crowded, but also not completely lonely. Felt right. He basically said sorry 100 times and that I deserved better. I agreed. He said he did love me and that he still does, but he would understand why I wouldn't want anything to do with him. He said that if I did, in fact, consider giving him a chance, that he would go to therapy, alone or together or both, and that he would work hard to win my trust back. I told him it wasn't possible. There was too much damage. This sounds calm when I type it, but in the moment, things came out more with a louder tone and harsher words. Anyways, he did say that he is in the, or will be, it was a bit of a blur, process of getting partial custody of my brother, and that he, in fact, does want to be a dad to him. He said he does not want to be together with my mom, that it was just a stupid mistake. Sure, because a 4 to 5 times mistake is just a random thing. He couldn't explain why he did it in the first place. I think he doesn't even know himself. I asked if he cheated with someone else before. He said no. Not sure if to believe it, but he sounded honest. I asked why he didn't come clean, and he said that after he did the deed, he always felt panicked and it hit him that he could lose me, and he just didn't want to. I told him it was meant to be found out. That what was his plan, to have my brother around and ignore their relationship forever. He said he didn't think far enough and that he was basically going with the one day at a time type of survival. I asked him if he felt that my mom seduced him. He said it was mutual, which made me want to puke again. I asked if he has any contact with my mom since I found out. He said yes, but mostly about my brother, didn't elaborate more, and I didn't press for more info on that. He said he told his parents the day before, or the day before that, not sure, Monday or Tuesday, about everything. The parents were not happy, but they are glad to start building now a relationship with my brother, their grandchild. Honestly, all of this felt like a punch in my stomach. I don't know why the parents wanted to contact me, but he told them to wait till he approached me first. Hence why he was here. I said if he started or thought about the custody before I found out, and he said no, but what I found out was like the push he needed. Great. Seems I helped him get his shit together. And this past week he was arranging all of that mess. That's why he hasn't tried to see me before. He sounded and looked defeated, but the whole thing made me, besides sad, angry. I was mainly depressed before, but now I'm furious. I feel like he is still in an okay place, and he isn't paying for his actions beyond me leaving him. He will have my brother, his parents, and others and move on with his life, while I lost everything. I hate him. We parted ways not on a happy note, and I told him to never get near me again. I was done. He asked me to still see my brother, that I was important to him, and tried to guilt-trip me, and it worked, but I still think I can't. I don't know. I don't know much about my mom and really hope she doesn't come find me anytime soon because I'm fuming right now and won't be able to handle it. I will be contacting my family and friends and finally doing the blasting today. I think it's about time, and after my talk with him, I got the extra push I needed. Update 2. A lot has happened. I did the blasting, and this is how it went down. I first posted on my family's group chat. We share this. This is from my mom's family side. I used inspiration from what you all suggested in my last post and said something around the lines of, I want to communicate to you all that my wedding with ex's name has been permanently canceled since I found out that my mom and my ex had, in the last few years, a sexual relationship which resulted in the birth of my little brother. I had no clue of any of this, and I found out about it last week. I won't have, moving forward, a relationship with mom's name, and ex's name, for obvious reasons. I would appreciate your understanding, and I felt it was only fair to let you know of the situation since I value transparency and honesty above all. I also included a screenshot of my mother's message, what I said to her once I found out. In a message she managed to write back before I blocked her. Didn't open the message till before the blasting. I didn't want to hear/read her and be persuaded. It exploded. I had family reaching out via text and calling the whole day after the blasting. I would say most were very supportive and I could tell they were just shocked. There were a few neutral and some suspicious that it wasn't the whole story and maybe I misunderstood. My grandparents were in the maybe you misunderstood category, which wasn't surprising since my mom is super close to my grandparents, and like I said before, my mom was always a good mom, so no red flags. I will be moving in with a cousin that is more like a sister to me. I haven't reached out to her previously because I knew once she knows, everyone would. That's why I went to my friend's place. My cousin is devastated on my behalf and offered I live with her and her 2 kids until I can get my feet on the ground. I accept it and will be moving next week. I'm a bit afraid this will give my mom easier access to me, but I can't stay at my friend's place forever. I then proceeded quickly to post a similar message. We share most of our friends since high school and local university friends on Instagram. I created a close friends story and tagged most of them too. This went sort of viral in our friend group. Actually, one of my friends sent me my Reddit post and asked if this was me. I confirmed. They were also shocked and speechless. They never thought my ex would even remotely do anything like this. They said, "He was crazy about you." Oh well, apparently he went overboard on the crazy part. The group of friends is divided ATM. Some are completely on my side, and some are thinking it isn't the whole truth. I told everyone that reached out that if they don't believe me, to ask their friend if he is asking for custody of my little brother. That kind of shut them up for now. My ex deleted his social media apparently also. My ex's parents called me. Like I guess they would. They were kind to me and were very sorry about everything. I got the feeling they are also overwhelmed and very disappointed. However, it was clear they will be supporting their son. They are very upset at my mother and don't want anything to do with her, but not sure how that will work with my little brother and everything else. They tried to give me info about the custody and what my ex is up to now, but I shut that down quickly and told them I don't want any info. I want to move on. I also asked them not to reach out in the near future. That I need distance, especially if they will be supporting my ex. He is living with his parents' ATM. Also, my ex and my mother, after the blast, were going nuts trying to reach out to me. They tried calling my friend, who then blocked them, and reaching out from different numbers. I had to put my phone on silence and ignore everyone. However, my mother sent me a long text from another number, and that was a weird text. She said that I was being cruel and that she didn't think she raised me that way. She said she thought we had a better relationship than me blasting out laundry like that without talking to her first. That I didn't have the whole picture. She did mention something that confused me. She said in her long-ass text that the reason she slept with my ex is because he reminded her of my dad. That it was grief. That she didn't mean to use him to heal her pain, but she wasn't strong enough. I don't even know what that means, like, did she think that my ex looks physically like my dad or personality or what? I have seen photos of my dad and well, yeah, my ex isn't super different but also not super alike. I mean, they share brown/dirty blonde hair, blue eyes, white skin, but that's not so uncommon. I don't see what else. I don't know. That threw me for a loop and honestly makes me want to confront my mom just to know what the hell. From all the things she could say, I was not expecting that. I'm holding on better. I don't cry every hour or want to murder them, but I'm still sad and upset, and it just feels like it isn't my life. That it's a big joke or a bad dream, and I will wake up to my normal life. I also need to really start planning my future and start applying for jobs in other cities, or maybe check the possibilities abroad more seriously. I might ask for 2 to 3 days off work to really get my thoughts together and do some research. I'm terrified. TBH. I feel frozen, but I know I need to start moving. Now on to the next story. Story 9. Manipulative Sil secretly invited my estranged toxic mother to my bridal shower. When I got upset, she played the victim card and turned my in-laws against me right before my wedding. I'm supposed to get married in a couple of weeks, And recently my sister-in-law got it into her head that she was going to throw me a bridal shower. My sister-in-law, let's call her Eva, is 3 years younger than me, and she seems sweet but can come off too strong occasionally. I am 27 years old, and so is my fiancé, Jacob. Both of us lived away from home for a really long time and went to college out of state, which is where we met. However, we were not friends when we were in college, so we never really connected back then. It wasn't until 3 years ago that we finally started dating. I ran into him at a party, and we realized that we were one of the few people who had stayed while everybody else had moved back to their respective homes after graduation. That's when we started talking, and we never stopped. I guess we moved in together so we could split the rent. After 3 months of dating, he decided to introduce me to his family. After almost 6 months of being together, because the time just felt right, and so did I. Now, I hadn't exactly met his family properly before that, but I had had an interaction with his sister at our graduation ceremony. She had come up to me to compliment my earrings back then, so I remember her, and we got along really well. The first time that I had dinner with his family, I remember thinking that it was nice to have such a sweet sister-in-law to be. But then, with time, I started getting to know her better, and it started getting a little annoying because I thought she could be a bit overbearing at times, and I really can't stand that kind of behavior. Part of the reason that I had moved away from my home and my family was because, even though I loved them, I could not stand it when people tried to control my life and make me live on their terms. I had more freedom away from them, so I moved away, and I think that's the same reason that Jacob moved as well. But then, about 4 months after we had met each other's families, Eva called me to tell me that she was moving closer to us because she had been applying for jobs in our city and had finally been hired at one company, and she had decided that she wanted to live nearby. I didn't really have a problem with it, but I thought it would get a little too suffocating to have to see her every day and have her live so close. So I decided to tell her that it would be more convenient for her to live closer to the city because Jacob and I lived in the suburbs, and it was okay for us because we didn't have to go too far for work. Because I worked from home on most days and his office is pretty close, but for her, that commute would be way too much. She seemed a little put off by that, but she didn't argue. Jacob and I both agreed that it would be for the best for her to live a little distance away from us because too much of a good thing is actually a bad thing. And as much as we loved our families, we did not want them around us constantly, and it would be important for us to have our space as well. It would also help Eva get acquainted with the city and make her own way because otherwise, she would just end up relying on us for everything, and we had our own lives. We couldn't always be there for her, but we still helped her look for a place and move in. We also told her about all the best spots in the city and did everything in our power to make her feel comfortable. We told her that any time she was in trouble or needed something, we would always be there for her because this was her first time living away from her parents and friends in a brand new city, and we knew firsthand how intimidating that could be. We did everything and said everything to make her feel like she could count on us, and she really could when it actually came down to it. But I guess things just got a little lost on her, and she believed that being able to count on us meant that she could show up at our house whenever she wanted to, and we would have to be okay with it. After she moved here, she would start showing up at our place every other day, and it was very inconvenient. Because after a long day of working, the last thing that Jacob and I wanted was this. I know that this makes us sound like total jerks, but honestly, we just wanted some time to ourselves, and we wanted our own space. And I don't know how to say it without sounding rude, but what she was doing just felt like a violation of our space. It wasn't even like she was lonely. At least it would have made some sense. But from her posts online, we could tell that she had already made a lot of friends. But she still showed up at our house consistently every other day. She would literally cancel plans with her friends to hang out with us, and we wouldn't have had a problem with it and would have actually found it very sweet if she didn't do it literally every other day. Even when Jacob and I would try to talk to each other about household matters and bills and stuff, she would hijack every conversation and make it about herself, which was kind of annoying. It just felt like she was everywhere, and it was getting a bit much for us. So we had a conversation about it, and we decided that we would just have to tell her that she had to cut it out and we couldn't let her come over every other day because we needed our own space as well, and this was becoming unhealthy. After about a month of this, we finally confronted her and told her that we didn't want her to visit so frequently and she should limit herself because it was becoming too much. But when we told her that, she started crying and said that she had always known that I didn't like her and she was just trying to win me over. I don't know where she got that from, so I asked her about it, and she told me that she always got the vibe that I didn't like her because I would never initiate conversations with her, and even when she tried to talk to me I would just be very quiet and distant. She also brought up the fact that I had suggested she live far away from us, which meant that I didn't want her around, and it seemed quite mean, especially when she was trying to make me her friend. Alright, maybe she got me with that one, but honestly, I am that way with everyone who is not close to me. So, apart from a few of my friends, my father, and Jacob, that's how I act with everybody because I like having my own space. I also really didn't like Eva that much after I really got to know her, which was after she moved here, so I decided to be honest with her and told her that I'm a bit introverted anyway, and after she moved here she had become very overbearing and I was finding it difficult to deal with. So my behavior towards her had changed, and I could understand that she was trying to make things better between us, but visiting us frequently would not make it better, and I think it would be for the best if we took a breather from each other and put this discussion on hold so we didn't end up hurting each other. I thought it was a reasonable suggestion, but she said that she wanted to talk it through that day itself. She told me that I had to open up to her or else we would never have a good relationship. Since Jacob and I were going strong, so she knew that we were going to get married eventually, and she wanted to have a good relationship with me because I was going to be her sister-in-law. I found it a bit unnecessary, and she basically strong-armed me into having a confrontation with her that day. If I'm being honest right now, the conversation that we had that day was pretty pointless because it was just her talking about her own feelings and completely invalidating everything that I said. She kept insisting that I did not like the fact that she wanted to hang out with me so often was an insult to her and said that she considers me family, so it was quite unfair for me to treat her that way. She told me that she had only tried to make me happy, but if I really disliked her so much, then she would never visit us again and got quite emotional. I honestly thought that she was being very manipulative at the time because she was behaving in such a way that made us seem like the bad guys. We were simply wanting to have boundaries. But I was tired of that conversation, so I ended up apologizing to her just because I wanted it to be over. Jacob also did the same, but we agreed that she was being quite manipulative. After she had left, we decided that we were going to try and put some distance between us for the next couple of weeks. But that was unnecessary because after that discussion, she herself took the hint and stopped visiting us that often. The downside to that was that she had become quite snarky about this afterward. Every time we met, whether it was at family events or even if it was just her coming to visit her brother, she would make jokes about me wanting my own space and stuff like that. It was harmless but pretty annoying because she made it sound like I was being unreasonable and crazy, but I really wasn't, and it was so petty that I didn't even want to bring it up with her and have another confrontation because she was quite manipulative, and I knew that she would just cry her way out of that one as well. So I said nothing about it, but things were a little weird between us after that. It only got better after Jacob proposed to me a few months ago, and I think that's when she stopped being so sour towards me, probably because she now knew for sure that I was going to be a permanent part of the family and didn't want to get on my bad side since that could create a rift between her and her brother. Jacob already had addressed the problems that he had with her, but he had kept in touch with her because, regardless of everything, they were still quite close as a family, and that was the only reason we still kept in touch with her even after she had shown us exactly how manipulative and cunning she could be. But after the proposal, she started being nice to me, and I really appreciated it because I didn't want to hold any grudges against her. I was ready to have a fresh start and move on because I was going to be a more permanent part of the family now, and I didn't want to have any bad blood with anyone before I got married. She was quite helpful throughout the process of planning the wedding and everything and was nice to me all through. So when, a few weeks ago, she asked me if I wanted her to throw me a bridal shower, I didn't say no. I figured that since she was being so nice to me, she would probably do a good job, and even though I didn't have any plans initially of having a bridal shower or anything of the sort, I thought I would give it a chance because she seemed quite excited about it and I didn't want to break her heart by saying no. So she got to the planning and I even gave her a guest list and everything was going smoothly. But then, 2 days before the event, she told me that she wanted me to show up at the venue at least an hour before, and when I asked her why, she told me that she just wanted me to make sure that everything was perfect the way it was, and if we had 1 hour, then I could come around, check everything out and make any necessary changes before the guests started arriving. I was really tired because, apart from planning the wedding and everything, I was also working, and it was all getting very exhausting for me, so I didn't want this extra task of checking out the venue as well. And I told her that she could do it herself and I would be fine with it, but she insisted that I come around an hour before and check everything out, so I agreed. But I felt like something was fishy about the way she was acting, and when I got there on the day of the event, I finally realized why she had wanted me to come an hour before the event was supposed to begin. She had taken it upon herself to invite my estranged mother to my bridal shower, and as soon as I entered the place, I did a double take because she was the last person I would ever expect to see here. And she didn't even know how to read the room because both my mother and I were equally awkward and uncomfortable to see each other. And she thought it would be nice to yell out surprise, as if it was perfectly fine. She had always known that my mother was not a part of my life and hadn't been for about 7 years now, and we had a very bad fallout a couple of years ago. I had a massive fight with my mother because she was constantly trying to control my life and make me like her, which is not something that I wanted to be. And anytime I would disagree with her, she would start insulting me, and it just really got to me, which eventually led to the fight. We had never had a good relationship even before the fight, but that argument was actually what ended everything, and since then we haven't spoken. But the point is that Eva knew about it, and yet she went ahead and invited her to my bridal shower. She even went on to tell us that she now wanted us to make peace with our past and hug it out, so we could finally have a fresh start and fix our relationship. At that point, I kind of lost it at her. My mother was looking at Eva as if she was crazy, and I just snapped and started yelling at her because this was completely unacceptable behavior to me, and I just wasn't going to let this one go. I chewed her out and said that she had no right to take matters into her own hands and try to control my life and make me do things that she thought I should be doing. I told her that inviting my mother to any event without even bothering to ask me first was a gross violation of my privacy, and we were not even that close, so I don't even know what she was thinking or why she believed that she could do this and get away with it, but I was going to make sure that there were consequences to this because she can't just put on the good guy act and get away with everything. She tried to defend herself and say that her heart was in the right place and she only wanted to help me reconnect with my mother before such an important day. But that's the whole point. It was not her place to help me do anything at all, and she didn't even think how I would feel. If she really had thought this through and cared about my feelings, then she wouldn't have done this. At that point, my mother intervened and told Eva that it was quite stupid of her to expect me to be grateful for anything at all because that's just who I was as a person, and she should have known that. There was something fishy the second Eva told her that she was invited to the event because I wanted to apologize to her and make things right. She should have known that I would never apologize for anything because I'm an ungrateful brat and will always remain one. Then she told me that I was always going to be a loser to her and she was just mad at herself for believing that I was capable enough to regret my decisions and apologize to her. She shouldn't have bothered coming here at all because I don't deserve it, and this was all just a waste of her time. I didn't even say anything to her because it was not worth it and let her storm out in a few seconds. After that, I followed because I didn't want to listen to Eva defending her decision any longer, and I was only waiting for the coast to be clear. After my mother was gone, I left as well, and I got into the car before Eva could chase me down and try to stop me. I was so mad that I didn't even want to attend the event, and I didn't even care about everybody else who was invited because my blood was boiling at that point, and I just wanted to get out of there. I blocked Eva so she wouldn't be able to contact me because I really didn't want her to be able to say anything to me. As soon as I was home, I decided to talk to Jacob and tell him about everything because this was the last straw for me, and I couldn't tolerate Eva anymore. She had crossed a line and I was not okay with it. I was fuming, so it took me a while to calm down, but once I did, I told Jacob about what Eva did, and he was equally outraged as me because he knew that my mother and I did not have a good relationship, and it was nobody else's place to decide what was good for me other than myself. He called Eva up and demanded that she apologize to me, but instead of just acknowledging her screw-up, she decided to turn the tables and pretend like I was the bad guy for storming out without even giving her a chance to fix things between my mother and I. She started playing the victim once again, and I could hear her since she was on speaker. I don't think she knew that, or else she would have probably been a little less lie. She told Jacob that she was only trying to help me out, and she didn't know that I would overreact the way I did. She then said that she found my reaction unacceptable, and if anything, then I am the one who owes her an apology because she had organized a really beautiful bridal shower for me, and I had completely ruined it with my temper, and then she had to cancel everything and call everybody up, even individually, to let them know that this was not happening anymore. She demanded that I pay her back for the whole thing because I had ruined everything and she wanted me to compensate her for it. But Jacob was really pissed off by what she said and told her that not only was I not going to give her the money because it was her own fault that she had to cancel everything, but she was also no longer invited to the wedding because it was quite unnecessary for us to have somebody at the wedding who did not respect us enough to treat us well, and we would all be better if she did not show up. Then he hung up, and we decided that we were not going to speak to her unless she apologized, which was unlikely because she was always trying to play the victim and be manipulative, but this was too far. However, after that, we began to receive several calls and texts from his parents, and they were trying to get to the bottom of this because apparently, Eva had called them up crying and complaining about our behavior. She had told them that we had disinvited her from the wedding just because she had tried to do something nice for me at the bridal shower, and now we were even refusing to pay her back, which was unfair because she had spent quite a lot of money on this event, and I had initially promised her that I would pay her back. But now I did not see a reason to do that because I didn't even get to enjoy the event, and it ended up being cancelled because of her own stupidity. So I don't see why I should give her any money when she completely ruined that day for me, and she does not deserve to be at my wedding. That's for sure because she really disrespected me. Jacob and I are not going to tolerate that kind of behavior. But my in-laws think that we are being too hard on her and we should think about how she feels because she was only trying to do a nice thing for me, and she didn't exactly think it through, which makes her kind of dumb but not exactly malicious like we are making her out to be, and she deserves a second chance. We tried to tell them that she did get a second chance, and Jacob had told her that she could fix everything by apologizing to me at least once. But she chose not to do that and instead tried to blame me for what happened. But even then, my in-laws insisted that her heart was in the right place, and I should give her another chance, and not doing so would make me the bad guy because then they would be forced to reconsider if even they wanted to be present at the wedding because if their daughter was not welcome here, then it would be very difficult for them to attend since this was supposed to be a happy family occasion. Now Jacob is upset, and I have no idea what to do because I feel like he is being forced to choose between his family and me just because I lost my temper at Eva. I feel like I screwed everything up, and even though deep down I know that at least some of this is definitely Eva's fault, I probably should have controlled my temper better. I'm so sorry for getting mad at my sister-in-law because she invited my estranged mother to my bridal shower without my consent and tried to force us to reconcile. Edit. Hi, so a lot of you have been asking what my last argument with my mother was about, and it was basically just her trying to get me to drop out of college so I could apply to medical school instead. She said that I was wasting my life by not following in her footsteps and that I was a disappointment to her. This was nothing new because I had been hearing these things ever since I was a child, and she believed that this would make me do better in life, but all it did was make me hate her. She and my dad got divorced when I was very little, so they had partial custody of me, but I really preferred staying with my dad because he acted like a normal parent and not a complete psycho like my mother. She would constantly make fun of me and humiliate me from a very young age, and she thought that putting me under insane amounts of pressure would make me a genius and unlock my full potential or whatever, but that's not really what happened. That last fight that we had was at a family dinner, and a lot of my relatives were there, which is why it stung even more that she was trying to humiliate me in front of all of them, and she even went on to say that if I didn't go to medical school and become a doctor like her, then I would end up just like my pathetic father. That's when I completely lost it, and yeah, that was the end of our very bad and toxic relationship, and I have no regrets about any of it. Eva and my in-laws know about this and always have. Update 1. Hi, so it's been 10 days since my failed bridal shower, and I have decided that no matter what, I am not going to talk to Eva. She can't get away with this every time and plays the victim every time she is confronted about what she did wrong. If she is wrong, then that's just it. There is no defense for what she did. And even if I'm willing to give her the benefit of the doubt and believe that she had good intentions, it does not take away from the impact of what she did, and she should have at least apologized for everything after she realized that I was not all right with my mother being present at the event or even back in my life in any capacity. But she chose to double down on what she did and tried to make me look bad by acting as if she was the victim here. I have spoken to Jacob and he says that he is upset, but he is not going to force me to do anything that I don't want to because at the end of the day he is marrying me and I am his first priority. Now that was really sweet, and I really appreciate him for saying that. I know his family means a lot to him, but I guess he doesn't mean as much to them because if he did, then they might have been kinder. But whatever, they haven't even spoken to him ever since Eva complained about our behavior. And I think that it's absolutely disgraceful that they are acting this way with just a few weeks to go for our wedding. Update 2. It's been 3 weeks since my fight with Eva, and recently Jacob and I learned that we had been blocked everywhere by Eva and her parents. I had blocked Eva first, so I don't really mind, but Jacob was kind of upset when he found out because this meant that his parents would definitely not be attending the wedding, and that was kind of a bummer for us since we really wanted this day to be perfect and had been looking forward to it for a really long time. But I guess things don't always pan out the way that you want them to, and we just had to be okay with it because we don't have a choice. The wedding is in less than 2 weeks, so if my in-laws really want to make things right, then they have some time, but I highly doubt that they are going to come back to Jacob because it's very clear to me now that it's more important for them to put their daughter's feelings above their son's. And I guess that was one of the reasons why Eva would never become a better person because her parents just keep enabling her. It's kind of sad because she will go through life constantly thinking that she is the victim in every situation that she is ever in. But in reality, well, we all know the truth. Update 3. Hey folks, so I'm married now, and I am quite happy about it. The wedding was everything that I had ever hoped and dreamed of. And on the day of the wedding, Jacob and I were so excited that we barely even thought of anybody else, especially people who were not even there. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, his parents and Eva were not able to keep their massive egos aside for even one day to make Jacob happy and therefore did not attend, but we still had a great time, and nobody asked about either because they had been busy gossiping about Jacob to their own relatives, and everybody pretty much knew about the fallout that they had. And guess what? They were on my side with this one, so whatever their plan was, it backfired pretty badly, and they totally deserved it. The important thing was that Jacob and I would be happy on our wedding day, and that we were, so we don't really care about anybody else. We have reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comments section. Thank you and see you in the next video.